We are live now. So good evening, everyone. I'm Neeru Ratin, founder and CEO of the Social Town. And it's with great pleasure, I am welcoming each and every one of you for the first edition of the Social Town Talk Series, International Conference on ESG and NetZero. So we have a wonderful partners here. Just a moment, I think I'm good evening, everyone. I'm Neeru Ratin, founder and CEO of the Social Town. I need to stop with great pleasure, I am welcoming each and every one of you for the first edition of the Social Town Talk Series, International Conference on ESG and NetZero. So we have a wonderful partners. Just a moment. Sorry for the technical glitch because I had to mute the YouTube video. Otherwise, you will hear my sound again. So here we are again, and so we have a wonderful partners: a NEEM software, Jitex Impact, Head Start Foundation, and our institution partners are St. Mary's College, Trishur, and Rajagiri College of Social Sciences. So we have 5 speakers scheduled for today, and our moderator for the day is Nimisha Tiwari. Nimisha Tiwari is an acclaimed media professional and founder of a social impact startup named Lightning Blue Collar, and she is going to take you through the questions or whatever you can ask. Nimisha, she is the right person to get you through the whole event. Welcome, Nimisha, for the event, and I would like you to set the context of today's sessions, and welcome Eric. And unfortunately, our first speaker, Eric, can't join us today because he is traveling to India from France. So we had to record his session. We have done that, and we have a wonderful, time with him, and we will be sharing it with you. Nimisha, can you take it over from here?
Good evening, everybody. It is such great privilege and honor to be moderating the Social Town Talk Series, the 5th one. Here with all of you. It is amazing to have an audience. So amazing, so learned, so educated, and so insightful on their own. Today, we will take you on to a journey to understand what is ESG in today's world and how can we actually reach net zero. If we have leaders who are part of our mentor panel, the ones who will speak today, if you would understand the insights that they would like to give to you, you will be surprised the way at the end of the day, you will have such an enormous knowledge base to understand that if you are in any part of India or you would anytime travel abroad, you will always carry forward this beautiful message of ESG and net zero. Today, as we begin our session, the Social Town Talk Series, the 5th one, this time, we would like to start it with an absolutely great leader who almost needs no introduction, Mr. Eric Solheim. We recorded his session because he is traveling right now, but the insights that he has given us on the recorded schedule itself is absolutely mind-blowing. If you are ready to take it forward, we will play it for you very soon. And before that, I would like to tell you a little bit about Mr. Eric. Mr. Eric Solheim is well-known global leader in environment and development, as well as an experienced peace negotiator. Now, have you ever heard a word called peace negotiator? Well, there is a word like that, and you too can begin to have a journey to become one. He served as Norwegian Minister of Environment and International Development from 2005 to 2012. And during that period, he initiated the Global Program for Conservation of Rainforest and brought the Biodiversity Act and legislation to protect Oslo city's forests. He led the peace efforts in Sri Lanka from 1999 to 2009, and as a main negotiator of the peace process and played a vital role in peace efforts in Nepal, Myanmar, and Sudan. Eric is Chief Mentor of Global Alliance for Sustainable Planet and Chairman of the Board of Afroz Shah Foundation in Mumbai, India. He serves as Chairman of the Development Roundtable in Green Hydrogen Organization and as a board member of International Hydropower Association. He is co-chair of Trillion, a green global blockchain company in Hong Kong. Now, if all of these titles mean something new to you, yes, the job scenario is changing. the world, the environment, our perception of what the world should be is also changing. So gear yourself, my dear audience. Today, we will take you on to an absolutely mind-blowing journey of ESG and net zero. I welcome you again to the Social Town Talk series, and let's get started with what Mr. Eric has to say to us. Over to you, Ninu.
Thank you so much, Nimi, for that, for kickstarting us with a very positive note and your, ever charming and vibrant, energy. And I'm going to share the recorded video here. So we will be listening to a conversation between our key speaker, Eric, and Umang Padar. She is also one of our speakers, and she will be talking about the opportunities of social enterprises and startup tomorrow. She had a conversation with Eric yesterday. I'm going to play that now. Once again, comment, play that. Hope all of you can see my screen. Please let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'm over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, what you are doing is commendable and bringing all stakeholders together to discuss on the most pertinent issues of current times that we are collectively facing. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm most happy to talk to Eric. When you offered me that opportunity, it was completely irresistible. So real honor, Eric. I would love to ask you all these questions, and we hope to gain from your knowledge and experience, and what all you have been, how you've been able to reconcile such interest in your professional knowledge. So your broad and wide spectrum of things you have done and all the hats that you have worn, I'm sure there are a lot of spaces where you had to reconcile and still continue to reconcile opposing interests. So in that context, my first question to you is, what is your view on balancing development and climate change? Whenever we have a conversation around climate change, first subject that comes is development. And do you think it can work together, and does it impact the growth, and how does green growth happens? Over to you.
It's a great question. It's even indeed the most important of all questions in this. But there is very good news, because the choice between environment and development, yes, it was there in the past. If you ask for the grandparents or even parents, if they wanted to develop, they had to be with a lot of destruction of nature. Coal was the cheap and only energy basically everywhere, so if you wanted to industrialize, yes, you need to do it by coal. And if you wanted to really move fast forward, there will be destruction of land, destruction of forest, so many negative impacts on the environment. But that was the past. We are now in the 21st century, a win-win opportunity, policies which are very good for environment and very good for ecology. Very good for environment and ecology, and very good for economy and jobs at the same time. Prime example is, of course, renewable energy. If you switch from coal to solar energy, not only do you pollute much less, so it's much better for our health, not only is it much better for Mother Earth because we don't create climate change, but it's also much better for the redlands of your company. You create more jobs, you save money on the state budget. If India, for example, move into solar and wind energy, well, the jobs will be created in India, not in Saudi Arabia, Russia, or wherever you import the oil. And the taxes will be, or the state budget of India will save a lot of money, which can much better be used for education or health. So it's really the win-win opportunity for the future. All the technologies, all the policies, and all the finances needed to go green and create jobs and prosperity at the same time.
Yes, that conceptually is something that we understand. And if you read our Indian, low carbon strategy, if you look at our Indian budgets, green growth strategy focus and a lot of development. And to just touch upon, before I ask you the next question, some numbers I thought, you must have known, but let me just say for our, benefit of our audience, that India is growing at 7%. It is one of the fastest growing economies. Apparently, by the Climate Change Performance Index of 2023, it is one of the best performing countries among the G20 countries. It's among the top 10. And our energy, our focus on renewable energy is very well known. We are aiming to achieve 500 gigawatt in 2030. We are channelizing the Solar Alliance, and how we are geographically and located. The renewable energies are definitely which can be leveraged, and there is an focus to do that. But this transition will take time, and while we talk about various you have looked at what Indian government is focusing. So what's your view on our let's say, pace and vision, both the things?
I'm very impressed with what Prime Minister Modi and the central government is actually doing at the moment. But I'm also impressed by what some of the states are doing, and even states which are led, say, Tamil Nadu, led by Chief Minister Stalin, is not from the BJP, but from the opposition. So it's not just the BJP. But what's happening at the center is amazing. And it's basically applying the lessons from, say, South Korea, when South Korea developed the previous places in the world, until now being one of the richest nations in the world. South Korea just passed Japan when it comes to GDP per capita. What an amazing achievement of South Korea, which was a colony under Japan. And what South Korea did was to create conditions for growth in their own economy. And through that, they created Samsung, Hyundai, and legal trademarks, which are people under so over the entire. What Prime Minister Modi is now doing in India is a lot of the same. Launching missions. Mission for green hydrogen, mission for electric batteries, missions for hydropower in the rivers, missions for electric mobility in cars and buses, using the power of the state to get favorable treatment for companies who want to go green. I ask everyone to do it, but give favorable treatment to some companies to drive the green economy. And we are seeing now all these technologies are taking off all over India at amazing speed. And this will mean that India can bring everyone out of poverty and make sure that every Indian at the end is part of the middle class, but at the same time doing it by green technologies.
Wonderful. When I hear this, it really fills me with pride.
You should be proud. It is so important for the world, and it's an amazing moment in Indian history. I mean, 25 years anniversary was there. There's so much to celebrate, and Indians can be proud of what they're doing at this point.
Yes, and you must be experiencing yourself when you come to India. That you can feel the excitement in the air. We have these, millennials and then these focusing on creating some solution which can, solve some problem besides our Indian, larger macroeconomic planning and everything. So before I move on to startups and innovation and technology, I wanted to know if you can throw some light on, and maybe in your experience or comparable to other jurisdictions, where is the main source for climate financing is? Is it public, private, or financial sector institutions? How? I would like to know how we can fund. Ultimately, the solution lies with the financing. So, what's your view about that?
First of all, in the long run, of course, you finance development by capturing markets. There are some developing countries which basically are sitting, waiting for Europe and the United States to provide them some development. They will fail. Unfortunately, there's no way that they will get the money they decide. Those developing nations, particularly India and China, will create the domestic conditions for green growth and try to capture market. they will succeed. As an example, I mean, there's a company in India, which I think all of you know, Ola. They have a fantastic factory in Tamil Nadu, 2,000 young Indian women creating electrical scooters. But they have an amazing slogan which says, Tesla for the West, Ola for the rest. Meaning that Ola can create scooters, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, cheaper, more efficient, and capturing the market, which is today dominated mainly by United States, Japan, and Europe, and in the short run will also be dominated by China. But India can capture markets and create jobs. And when you create jobs and value for the future, normally financing is not so challenging. But indeed, there is a need for finance, and because the big banks, financial institutions in India need help. Government may have to take some of the risk by making risk guarantees, and India should for sure be open to investments from the rest of the world. But it will be investment, there will be carbon credits, but India is not a destination for development aid, so no one will come and hand out anything for free.
No, absolutely. There are no free lunches. That is really, I mean, there are bigger problems in the world where, the capital should flow. But yes, I mean, India has over years with FDI and our other, institutions now with sustainable investing, impact investing. And, again, we are in our growth stage journey. So we are looking at creating shared value instead of, looking for arms in that sense. But in this context, I just wanted to understand under the Paris Agreement, the commitments of developed nations, whether India is space for that or not. But what do you think of that? This capital that is committed to be raised and shared for, even climate adaptation and mitigation issues that the world is facing. If you could just throw some light on that.
Yes, indeed, there's been a huge discussion in the climate talks on the financing mechanism. But I know that these financing mechanisms will be slow and to be bureaucratic, and unfortunately, they tend to deliver limited amounts of money. So that's why I believe so much more in what they call the Indian or the Chinese approach, which is how do you create the domestic conditions for green growth and start capturing market. That's much more likely to succeed than to look into this money. But there is one source of international finance which may be quite interesting for India, and that is carbon credits. That's not public money, that's money coming from companies. But for example, if say Microsoft or Amazon, big American companies, they promise to go carbon neutral. They want to go carbon neutral. They cannot do it just by putting solar into all their value chains. There will be a risk, and that's the rest you will have to purchase carbon credits. Sample of that will be in India, restoration of the mangroves along the coast, tree planting, improvement of the national parks, protection of forests, maybe improvement of the patterns of the rice paddies going in a green direction. For all this, there may be opportunities to receive international funding through carbon credits. And carbon credits will be much less bureaucratic and in the long run, much bigger money than the development aid. So I think when it comes to international, India should focus on international investments from Europe, America, China, and others, and from carbon credits, because that's where the big money lies, and also where the opportunity for technology exchange lies. And of course, India will want to tap into the best technology from companies from.
That's wonderful. Actually, you answered my next question that I wanted to understand. And if you could also give your insight into projecting how this market will evolve in next few years, because India definitely is looking at carbon market, which is why our budget focus is also on, mangroves and coastal areas and wetlands and market anyways is evolving and leveraging all sorts of existing domestic financing options such as CSR allocation that we towards these kind of carbon sequestration projects. But still, I feel globally it is also fractured, whether it's compliance market or voluntary market, and whether market itself is evolved or not. I think London Stock Exchange's capital market vertical has come only last year. So where do you think we will be able to organize this? And of course, the carbon registries, their compatibility. So, there are a lot of complications in that space. So if you could just, share your insight on this.
Well, I mean, absolutely. There are two sorts of carbon markets. One is the carbon markets within
No more volume.
Nino, we are not able to hear audio. I'm not sure if it's just for me.
Hi, Nino. The
so
video,
these
the
which
video
are
sound.
setting
Yeah,
negotiations
back.
between the United States and everyone else. That will be very, very hard. So I thought we will see global rules, that we will see these voluntary carbon markets, and there will be a lot of money in it because basically every company in the world of any size have not promised to be carbon neutral. And if you are an airline, there's no way you can be completely carbon neutral by air fuel. Maybe in 20 years, aircraft can run on electricity or green hydrogen, but not now. So if an airline wants to be carbon neutral, they need to buy carbon credits, and that can be restoring the mangroves of Andhra Pradesh, reforesting Tamil Nadu, protecting the national parks of Madhya Pradesh. There are many, many opportunities for India to tap into these markets. But there will not be one rule for the world. There will be criticisms from NGOs who say that this is not good enough.
Yes.
But still, it will make a lot of money available for good green projects.
Yeah, that one thing I find very, very exciting and hopeful. I mean, we have to be practical about the fact that these, most carbon intensive industries and how we have been living and, how our institutions are, it's not going to change overnight. And the hope is in this to raise finances to actually turn the other parts of the world green, which have yet not, been urban jungles, or Indian population majority still lives in rural areas. So there is hope there. I mean, there is hope for innovation and everything just to change sustainable living there. So yes, I mean, I completely agree with you. So in that context, when we move on to the other stakeholders, for example, first and foremost, I think the fourth pillar for our development strategy is innovation and technology. How do you have seen that playing a role globally, and what's your view of it playing a significant role in our I mean, a lot of it is already happening in carbon capture technologies and, tech solutions, climate, clean tech, ed tech, legal tech. I mean, it's impacting various parts of our sustainable vision. What do you think is, is the journey that sort of follows from here?
No, I mean, the technology is the main component of the change we need. We also need to change lifestyles, but the most important is technology. I mean, if you, in your house, if you turn on the light in the morning, I doubt that you spend a lot of time thinking of how is this energy made. And if the government of India, for that matter, the state of Delhi, where we are living, if they can replace coal with solar on your net, it will work exactly the same way in your house. Simply will be a clean versus a bad or a brown source of energy. Same with your car. I mean, the electric car is even better than the gasoline car. So if you don't do something new to the electric car, you get a better car. I'm living in Norway. It's a cold place, as most people know. And if you have an electric car, you just take up your app in your house, you turn on the engine, and when you come down to the car, it's completely warm. But in the past, of course, you spend 10, 15 minutes freezing in the car until you have warmed the car. And the electric car is working better. Now we have electric cars with a range of 500-600 kilometers, which if you then take a coffee stop after 500 kilometers, and you can recharge it. So technology is improving by the day. The most important technology in the next decades is probably artificial intelligence. And for sure, there are some problems with artificial intelligence. It needs to be regulated, but it's also an enormous opportunity for environment improvement. Just a couple of examples. So you can integrate solar and wind and hydro at the net in a completely new way, saving a lot of energy. And saved energy is also the best energy, because when the sun is not shining, the wind is not blowing, you turn on the hydro, and this is done constantly by artificial intelligence and make the grid enormously more efficient. Another example, the biggest cause of death among people between 15 and 30 in India is traffic accidents, road accidents. No disease is any close to killing as many young people in India as road accidents. Well, with artificial intelligence, the cars will drive automatically in the beginning, and then the car will drive with you as a supervisor, you can intervene, and then it may be driving in a separate car lane. But soon you will be able to drive a car automatically in the traffic or Mumbai or Delhi or wherever. And that car will never speed over the car limit, speed limit. It will never drink. It will never fall asleep. And all the these accidents will basically be removed, or at least most of them. Again, there will be problems. You will for sure have some accidents also initially with these automatic cars, but over the time, they will save tens of thousands of lives, which are today unfortunately killed in India, young people, because of road accidents.
True. That does sound music to my ears. I hope we get there soon. You know, lives are precious, and the bigger even natural disasters and other adaptation, mitigation we can do with technology. We've come a long way, and there's still a long way ahead. Okay, so next I will come to so when we talk about climate change, obviously these solutions also are coming from private sector. So my question is more in corporate sustainability perspective. I mean, India has a bigger vision. It has its own, commitments on going net zero that boils down to individually on the corporations and their old business models and that transition. So what do you think, how we can change that? I mean, there's a lot of movement has started happening, but what do you think would be more important factors which will cause sustainable businesses to come about?
By far, the most important is the attitude of the business leaders to understand these win-win opportunities. That yes, you can keep your shareholders happy, you can create profits, keep your staff happy, creating jobs, but you do it without destroying Mother Earth. Let me give you one example from another country. Last year, Indonesia had zero deforestation. That's a fantastic achievement, because Indonesia is the second biggest deforestation in the world. And just 10 years ago, deforestation in Indonesia was absolutely horrendous. They cut down trees from the beautiful forest by the day. How did this happen? Yes, indeed, the government of Indonesia has put in place good policies. I mean, Jokowi, the president, has made that, and the parliament has supported, so we have put the right laws in place. That is also to a large extent due to the efforts of the Indonesian companies. Because these companies realized they cannot continue our old ways. They were a part of the big problem in the past. They destroyed the forest, but they understood that our staff don't want that, our customers don't want that. It will be hard to sell our product if we continue this way, so we will change. One good example is RGE. that is the biggest or second biggest paper and pulp company in the world, and one of the biggest palm oil companies in the world. So in the past, they were an important part of the problem in Indonesia. Now, there's zero deforestation in the value chains. They're not cutting any trees because they use the land which is already destroyed from nature to feed the paper to produce the palm oil. Adding, they're also taking one step forward and saying, we, our company, will be a main protector of the rainforest in Indonesia. They are protecting a huge rainforest in the island of Sumatra. And that rainforest is better protected than any rainforest which comes under the garment of Indonesia, simply because RGE has all the fire brigades, all the helicopters, all the equipment, and all the power and strength to make sure that no one is destroying the rainforest they protect. So that's just one example of how a company transforms itself from being part of the problem to being part of the future. But of course, I can mention a number of Indian companies which are in the part of this exact process. I mean, look to Adani. He was a huge coal producer in the past, but Adani is now a major part of the green solution for the future of India. He just invested a big amount of money in Sri Lanka in wind farms there.
Yes, I just read that in the news. So even Reliance is focusing on hydrogen and, the alternate fuels and everything. And as in the context of saying the transition has to begin somewhere, but how soon we get there is another. We have to meet our global targets as well. So keeping that hope on. Moving on to, I think, towards just to touch upon these things where you mentioned the made a reference to greenwashing and activists opposing. Where do you think these stakeholders contribute in the sense of, they have their own right space of questioning policies and business actions and a whole lot of, other communications and narratives that are created, and not everybody is well-meaning. So just to get your view on, these stakeholders, their expectations, demands, and how to reconcile those.
Well, very clearly, there will be a number of efforts for so-called greenwashing, which will be same oil as company that we are very, very green because of this. We see a lot of this. But I'm not so worried with this as many others, because there are limits to how long you can fool people. You cannot fool the shareholders, your own staff, the customers over some time. Yes, in a short period, people, but over time, civil society will point to your mistakes. Media will come out and showcase that you're trying to fool people. And even your own staff and your own shareholders will be unhappy because they understand the hypocrisy. So over time, companies will not be able to fool people in that way. So I'm not so worried, but absolutely, you need the civil society groups and media and others to keep business responsible.
Correct. And in that context, only the other institutions like, political alterations, we see many jurisdictions coming up with their green justice parties or green party. In your country are part of one and driving that change. Where do you think these political institutions and even other mechanisms, like judicial activism, shareholder activism, class action, are these really the tools for change, and at what point does a society or a nation in its path of growth, get automatically, organically develops these, or it's something that sort of is an influence that comes from, nearby or close to, we are one world. So at what point do you think these have a role to play?
At the end, the most important of all is the political leadership, because if the president and the prime minister are not driving change, green change, it will not happen. But I think they are largely in a fortunate position. As I said earlier, Prime Minister Modi is a major driver of green development in India, but so is President Xi in China or Biden in the United States. And a couple of months back, Brazil elected Lula really dedicated environmentalist as the new president of Brazil, which is the biggest rainforest nation in the world and one of the biggest nations in the world overall. So we have a good number of decent green political leaders. But for sure, I recommend to everyone, wherever they are, in whatever nation they are, to vote for green politicians, to support green politicians, and also to stand up young people to run for office if they want to go green, and to write in articles, engage themselves in tree planting or putting solar power on the roofs of the university, or whatever it may be, because all these activities also putting pressure on the political leaders to get it right. You mentioned judges. Last week I was in Brazil with Judge Benjamin, is one of the members of the Supreme Court of Brazil, and he's an absolutely dedicated environmentalist who's spent his life using the laws of Brazil to push green developments in that fantastic nation. And of course in India, we also have seen a lot of activist judges who's using the bar as an opportunity to promote green developments in India.
Oh yes, for decades now. I mean, our whole public interest litigation as a right started from there. I mean, starting from our constitution. I mean, protecting environment and improving it is not only states' responsibilities, our citizens' duty as well. So, from there to judicial activism, we have a national green tribunal, we have very progressive laws. I mean, it is definitely, in our framework of governance and of course now we have life as this, and how the society in general is, working towards sustainable habits. I think I'll stop here. We have taken quite enough of your time, and this has been absolutely insightful, inspiring, and hopeful conversation. Thank you for sharing your views and your knowledge and case studies from other places. So I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you, and hopefully more conversations to come. I will hand it over back to you to just take over from here.
Thank you so much. I was new to your conversation. Thank you for taking the right question. So thank you for your time. I have one question for you. So there's a lot of students, especially social work students, I believe in you and he gets a so I'm mostly hearing in section and primarily I want them to, at the younger age, if I want them to engage in civic activities. I think they will not be a part of the problem then. But if they are not, problem solvers, if they will understand and they will not create more problem problems. So what would be your advice to the young generation, to the Indian youth, will not see that happening? So what would be your advice to that, the young and vibrant future of India and future?
I think no one has said this better than Gandhiji when he said that we need to be the change we want to see in this world. And I think I will encourage every young person to really try to be that change he or she wants to see. How can that happen? It's not just one way. I mean, in many ways. You can vote for the politicians who agree. When you go to the shop, you can ask the shopkeeper for the green product. I mean, if you're buying a scooter or for that matter, some food, you ask for the greenest products. You ask if you're in the school, you ask the school leadership to put the solar panels on the roofs. If you are in a village, so you have a garden, you start planting trees and encourage others to do that. Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, by the way, Mr. Chavan, is planting one tree every day. And that creates a small little forest just by him, but because it's much more important to encourage other people in Madhya Pradesh to do the same. So, and of course, look for the skills. Maybe you can study some topic or get some skills which are needed for the green revolutions, because you need skilled people. I mean, solar farms or green hydrogen is not developing itself, it's developed by people. need skills, so look into what skills in your school which would be beneficial for the green shift. All this together, you will be the change you want to see in the world.
Thank you so much. So we have this presentation for you. So would like to invite you to a big stage and not would like to give some kind of food. But I'm assuming this big stage and I'm inviting women to present a motion. Instead, I'm going to present that now.
Again, thank you so much for being here, giving us time, sharing your views and your knowledge, your experience with us. This has been very beautiful conversation. And thank you for giving this opportunity to me. So happy to be here and hopefully more times to come.
I would talk to them. So if we all come together and work together, there's no limit to what we want. This is all by our own here speaker, Eric. Thank you so much for everything you do for the planet. We really appreciate it. And we pray for your health and everything, that God more strength to do more in the future. Thank you so much, sir, and thank you, Umang, for this.
Thank you.
I hope it was a very insightful conversation. So you can put your comments or feedback, or if you have any questions to Mr. Eric, you can share it with us. I will try to get an answer from you. So we have our next speaker here. So from here onwards, we will have live conversation. So we have our next speaker here. So I'm inviting Nimisha to invite our next speaker and set the context.
Thank you, Nino.
Over to you, Nimisha.
Thank you, Nino. Our last session was with Mr. Eric Solheim, and he spoke to us about the fight against climate change and how India can lead the world. And if you have tuned in just now, I would like to remind you that you are in a Zoom virtual call right now in the 5th edition of the Social Town Talk Series International Conference on ESG and NetZero. With this, I would like to say how privileged and honored I am to now invite our next speaker, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan. Mr. Abhishek Ranjan is going to speak to us about top drivers for sustainability and responsibility in the current year of 2023. This is as relevant as it can get. To tell you a little about Mr. Abhishek Ranjan, he is the Director of Sustainability at Brilio, a US-based company that focuses on digital technologies and big data analytics. As the global head of Brilio's sustainability programs and associated thought leadership and communications, Abhishek built the sustainability practice along with the award-winning CSR program, Brilio Bringing Smiles, which aimed at helping 100,000 plus underserved children. He is the leading carbon neutral program head, D&I alumni programs and employee outreach at Brilio. Abhishek has been awarded by ASSOCHAM, Stevie, American Business Award, Rotary, FKCCI for his sustainability thought leadership work, and also recently was awarded as CSR Person of the Year 2021 by India CSR Network and top 20 diversity leaders of our country. I welcome you, Mr. Abhishek. This is such a pleasure to be able to speak to you, to see you here. This is a virtual session and we will get your insights absolutely in the most relevant manner for the year 2023. Welcome, Mr. Abhishek.
Thank you, Nimisha, and good evening, everyone. Hope I'm audible. Yeah.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, and thanks, Ninu, for inviting me for this occasion. And after hearing, Nimisha's introduction, And she like really pumped me, right? So this is my third speaking engagement of the day, and obviously, I was a little down because how much you can speak in a day, right? But then hearing Eric and his views on the whole change at scale, what he was talking at, I think is really motivating. And there was a question asked a few days back in one of the panel that which region is leading in the environment and ESG in the world? There's India, Europe, and North America. And the answer was Europe. And that's how it shows that how political leaders, businesses, and the society at large are kind of collaborating together to kind of have a sizable, meaningful impact. This morning when I got up, I was checking my Facebook, and I saw a post from one of my cousins who lives in San Francisco. And he shared a picture that after 10 years, almost he lives in the Bay Area for last 10 years. In the last 10 years, first time he sighted snow, right? As you know, San Francisco and California is not a place where there would be snowing and all, right? It is like a little warmer, like a Bangalore, moderate temperature and all. So I posted on that, and it's just great to that you cited, snow, but this is also a situation which is quite alarming. Dallas is another city, which I often visit, and the kind of temperature rise or you had a cloud burst, you had a heat wave, and you had a extreme snowing in just 1 year. Can you imagine heat wave, cloud burst, and the extreme snowing just in 1 year, which has not happened in decades. Since all of you are from India, you know what are the climate change how real it is, right? So I think the time has gone where we discuss that whether we have to do. I think all the good work should have been started yesterday. Not even like after discussing today's call, right? Or during today's call. Now, what are we discussing? Like, what is that we are trying to stop, right? So the damage we have done already to the environment. It's not that we are waiting for damage to happen. Damage was done. Damage was done by our generation, probably a generation before, or maybe the last few generations already. Now it's time to kind of, somehow contain the damage. And what's the damage we are talking about? If the world's temperature rise by another 1.5 degree Celsius, the glaciers, there will be catastrophe in the whole world, right? There will be water submerging, there will be quakes, there will be a lot of natural disasters will start having in a big phenomenon. And then the earth will have a very tough time. The human race will be tested like never before. Do you want to go to that path, or you want to stop much before? So just about simple arithmetic that controlling the earth rising temperature to not exceed more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is the race we all are talking about. That is what everything in the climate change we talk about. Now, how do we do that, right? There are three parts of it, there are three important pillars of it. The first is climate change itself, which is your, as I talked about the temperature rise and carbon and reducing, emissions, etc. The second aspect is the whole water conservation. You might have read this statement a lot of time or heard that the next world war will happen because of water challenges, right? and water is an issue. Cities, health conditions, your skin, your hair, your disease increase is happening. The kind of contaminated water, the vegetables that we consume, it's a big concern, right? And the third aspect is the forestation. How much of forest we are covered, the green cover we are actually growing in real terms? How many plants we actually plant, and then it grows into trees, and then it gets a green cover. So I think this is the three pillars we are talking about to kind of sustain it. Now, each one of the organizations, whether it's a government, society, corporates, non-profits, all of them are racing ahead the time to control this 1.5 degrees Celsius challenge. Now, if we just flash back to COVID, time like COVID, the world's carbon emissions, there is a significant contribution from the aviation industry, the airline industry. And the number is 10 to 11%. And what we saw, airlines not functioning for a large part of the world, large part of their fleets. The climate change, what we saw in India, the blue sky for the first time, right? I have never seen such a clean blue sky than ever during the COVID first wave. People cited in from Punjab, they cited a lot of people cited, Mount Himalaya ranges, which they have never seen in their lifetime. A lot of such good things happened. Just because there was no vehicles running on the road, not much. And the people are not traveling, aviation, right? But now the situation is back to probably worse. I come from a city called Bangalore, and I commute to work at least 3 to 4 days in a week, and we are back to the same challenges. So what is driving the world? I will just quickly take a small presentation to kind of set some context that, what are the few things are driving? And these are not some compliances. These are not some regulations by the government, but something like this, organizations are doing them on their own. And if you look at, the current scenario, what do we see? We see that whether the company is operating in one country or few countries, it really doesn't matter. People are concerned about what's happening in US people are concerned about what's happening in Africa. So when this, and we are totally in a global, economics, scenario. And what we see here is that whether you are a global, company, we are not an Indian company, or we are an Indian company, some of the Indian companies operating in different markets, each one of them has to work with the local communities wherever they operate. We can't ignore being an Indian company, what's happening to the communities elsewhere, and the vice versa. So there are 4 things happening at this point of time, right? Which I want to kind of walk you through. The whole world is actually converging on these 4 principles. The whole setup, whether it's a non-profit to government to corporate, civil societies, everybody's talking about sustainability as a term. No longer we are concerned about it, what things can happen in short term, long term, very measurable, and that's how the impact has come. We are no longer discussing about output and outcomes, but the real impact, what the projects and investments are making on a long term, and very measurable, all numbers driven. And you see a lot of technology innovations already happening in the space. And finally, people like us and many of us who are taking a social entrepreneurship route to solve societal problems. So these are the basic principles I think we all understand. Just to give you a perspective, one single company, what is the size and scale? And if these companies don't do good for the society, what damage they can do for the world, right? This is just an eye-opener in terms of numbers. But this is how the private players are becoming the new, the largest stakeholder in the environment space. There are some of the other actions we keep seeing in the last decade or so. And some of you would have probably have heard about, how ESG investments, how sustainable, responsible investment is taking a front seat. And we will discuss some of these as well, how it's happening, right?
Please mute.
Thank you. And see, there are a lot of surveys has been done by Harvard to McKinsey and so many of them. And each of the surveys actually talked about that being sustainable is actually being profitable. So one of the survey when McKinsey did, and they asked the C-level executives that, hey, why sustainability or ESG doesn't feature in agenda? This is like probably 7-8 years back, or maybe a decade back. Very conveniently, they answered that, when we were doing MBAs or our masters, nobody taught sustainability. And that's how you see that now most of the MBA colleges, most of the business schools are teaching it. And these are the managers who are responsible managers of the future, who's going to drive sustainability agenda. Now, very quickly on the top 10 drivers, look at this conversation, right? And how earlier sustainability was in operations, finance-led, function in the companies. And now it is going all the way to the board and the chairman level. And what's happening here? When you look at companies who are thinking on quarter to quarter, run rates and profitability, etc., where the chairman and the board and the CEOs are thinking of a long-term view of educating their skills of their employees, that here how it has to be, we all have to think about sustainability. This sustainability is a stable state. And it is a kind of a measure which is not like somebody has to tell that, okay, we ought to do for good, for somebody's good. Actually, the sustainability is good for the companies. And one of the examples is this, the next slide, what I have. Every single thing you do in a green sustainability efforts will actually can be measured back in cost saving, in numbers, right? And we all say that until unless you measure, you can't manage it. So measure it to manage every single thing. And I know some of my friends who are on this call would probably agree, who are from the corporate sector, that how, energy consumption reduction, to have a less travel, to have a green fleet of cars, to have a green data center or sustainable data centers or sustainable cloud. All of this energy optimization tools are actually not only helping us to reduce carbon emissions, but actually it is also saving money for us. Now, what happens in companies? More you emit, more you have to invest in environmental. Either you do, project investment, or you do, initiatives which actually give you carbon positives. So it is a great effort that if you reduce your carbon emissions, your consumptions, you will have to spend less on, being carbon neutral or carbon positive. So that's how the world is seeing now, and companies are very much talking about. The new Gen, the Gen Zs and Gen Zs of the world and the new workforce actually look at companies not only just in the paymasters. They don't look at the brand, but they also look at how they are fair to people, fair to employees, right? And we have seen situations where big companies have gone into strikes, both in India, US, and elsewhere. And we have seen that how companies who connects their employees in volunteering, corporate citizenship program, how much connect they have for the brand, and they have, less attritions. they have more power to attract a new workforce. So these are the other areas we are looking at. The next on our agenda is the changing consumer preference. And I think each one of you on this call will probably agree. Every time we receive a parcel from or a packet from Amazon or Flipkart, we crib about it. How much plastic, how much paper, how much of stuff they have used for packaging. You can go and see in any city the number of Ayurveda or organic shops has opened. You have seen that how people are consuming. So there are a bunch of new models have developed for delivering products which are more hygienic and organic, etc. So the new generation and even the generations before are getting more sensitized about these issues. And no more the purchase decisions are happening just on the cost point, right? People are willing to pay a little extra for getting a good product, which is probably will not do that damage to our health, right? So this is another area. This is a survey which is you can just probably think about. Now, the next thing on the agenda is the whole marketing, the cause-based, social-based marketing. And you will see that a lot of such companies, and if you especially follow television, if you watch, different channels, you'll see there is a huge surge in terms of the advertisement having a social message. And that's a differentiation, right? And then today on the CEO's table or CXO's dinner, they don't just discuss, like everybody's like making tons of money, but they talk about these issues because these are the issues which differentiate between a brand and the other brand, right? If people have a respect for IKEA or a Body Shop or a Tata Tea, that's for a reason, not just because of the product itself. So the brand itself is getting created out of being more responsible. You'll be surprised that there's only one company in the world, one company from India in the world who features in the top 100 brand. And no prizes for guessing is Tata's, right? No other company has made it to top 100 from India. Now, Tata has not just gone there because they're huge in terms of their businesses and revenues, but also because of the brand they have created, because of a responsible. So today's a world for a responsible brands. And if you represent any of the companies, I think you realize that how much being sustainable, being responsible plays to your brand building. Now, supply chain is actually one of the largest driver for sustainability. If you look at ESG and sustainability per se, it's not that a lot of government mandates or government compliances are there, but the way the stakeholders, your customers, your investors, your employees are demanding for it is actually driving it. Now, what happened to a supply chain concerns it. Now, what was happening in a Foxconn factory in the China when there were manufacturers, Apple's iPhone, and the labor conditions were so bad that people were taking their life by jumping from the building. And this Chinese company, put a fishing net to kind of catch those employees who were trying to take us, their life and bring back to the work. And then there was a lot of, reports on this. You can search BBC Undercover Reporter and a lot of other reports. It talks about how a factory was running where employees has to work for 20 hours a day, less, very less salary, no proper food, no proper health access. And these are the people making a premium product, making a very, very, high costly product. It's like almost like a, this is like iPhone. This is not just a basic necessity thing, right? People pay premium to get this. It's like you acquire a product. And that's how, and that becomes an uproar in the US that, your phone, your iPhone has somebody's blood on it. And that's a campaign run, right? So these are the challenge. So now the buck doesn't stop that my company is sustainable, but is my upstream and downstream, are they sustainable also? And that's where you see supply chain driving a lot of our customers, investors are asking tough questions, right? Earlier, 5 years back, there was tick mark. Today, it's not like that. They will ask, okay, last year you did this. What did you do this year? Have you audited your document? Have you shown me everything? They will do their own third-party audits. That's kind of cross-examination happening. And if I move from supply chain, the circular economy. See, every single thing we use, right from your needle to aircraft, is made of some metals, some natural, resources. And each of these natural resources is not infinite. These have a limited life. And what if you don't put in a circular motion? You just go waste and you are depleting that natural resource. And what will happen? Maybe my next generation or next generation next will not even have an access to some of these, right? The way we are consuming fossil fuels, already we have taken a lot of it. The way we are consuming coal, we are taking. What guarantee that India has after 50 years or 60 years that they can produce electricity from coal? Because we will be consuming the coal. Then we'll go to the next item and we'll finish that. And then, so this is not the way the world can sustain. And sustainability is not about just you're thinking about yourself. Are you good? Your current businesses, your current financial activity shouldn't ruin or shouldn't deprive our future generation from the access of whatever we got from our previous generations, right? We got clean water. I remember growing as a kid, we don't have RO water. I used to drink water from, probably from tap. And that's what most of the developed country has it even today. We didn't have air purifier. We have air purifier. We have water purifier. I don't know what all we will need. Probably tomorrow we need a food purifier before you put. I think it's already there, right? So every single natural resources which were free, which was clean, easy, we as the the industrialization also had created an impact. And we don't know what is the severity of those impacts. So it's very important that we go into a circular motion. If somebody is not using it, if you're not using your clothes, old clothes, donate it. Let somebody else which doesn't have a cloth at all. Get your shoes, give your shoes, give your electronic devices, because there are a lot of people in India needs it. So, and the companies can collaborate, right? After 3-4 years, we don't use our old laptops in the office. Then what do we do? We throw? No, give it to somebody. Sorry. So, see, most of the countries in the world, after life product, is a responsibility of that manufacturing. Unfortunately, India is not yet picked up. We have some good examples, like what's happening in the car industry. You see this Maruti True Value. You have other such, which basically ensure that then even after 15 years, the car is in circulation motion, in a circular economy. Likewise, we need that for your chargers, your mobile phones, all these devices what we're using. So there's a big issues, and I think there's a lot of discussions around this. Due to paucity of time, I'll keep moving. But this is a one thing which most of the companies are very, very worried about, the individual stakeholders. Now, the visible stakeholders, can have a strategy, plan, mapping, whatever. But what? Every single one of us, right? Every single person on this call, right? Whether it's Nimisha, myself, Ninu, all of us are stakeholder of every single company. If some company is doing wrong, just go on social and talk about it. And we have seen things are happening. And my personal experience, if some company product which I buy as a consumer, and if I feel that that they're not responding, just go on Twitter and tweet. You see how the responses comes to you. Literally, they will run for you to get the tweet out, tweet deleted from your post. On Twitter. So this is where the big challenge, and this is also companies is has to be really careful about this new phenomena that every single individual. My penultimate point is about social activism. Well, there's something called social license in India or anywhere in the world, but you need to have a community equity in your company. Now you acquire a land, and if the land, you give money, but you didn't just acquire land. You acquired everything, their livelihood, their skills, what they had to grow vegetables or whatever they were doing. Now just paying the land, you give them a big money, Now, those farmers don't know what to do with the money. They'll buy a new property, a car or accessories or whatever, but they don't have a sustainable income because they don't have any other skills. So where will they go? Is it our responsibility to stop just by acquiring land and paying for that land price? No. We have to think about their livelihood, and that's how, R&R, R&R is a very common when the companies are investing in, especially in the rural markets, right? And if you do not, manage your stakeholders, the stakeholders will manage you. And that's what we see a lot of, plants, a lot of factories, a lot of such things getting closed. So this is a big concern, and companies has to take care of account of the communities and especially the local communities where they operate. Now, BlackRock CEO, this is my final point. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. When there's a lot of news about BlackRock, if you probably see on internet. Now, BlackRock is saying that we will not make investment unless you are a ESG, a sustainable company. But some of the states in the US, including Texas and others, they are saying that we don't care whether we want development. Development can happen on the cost of ESG. We don't care. But imagine a private player like BlackRock is saying that I will not invest unless it's a ESG and sustainability. But the state governments, a few of the states in the US, saying we don't care. We want development because of ESG. We can't wait for it. So this is another. It's a positive sign that companies, the whole industry, which is probably the cause of this whole thing, are gearing up to do that, right? And you see that SEBI has regulated 1,000 top companies as per the stock listing. Have to do the responsibility reports, not just about financial, but what they're doing for environment and all. So there is a lot of such positive signs happening across the world. I'll leave you with my last slide, which talks about how different companies are actually, doing sustainability CSR in a different way, right? Right from someone educating supply chain to having more green building. Some of them, their salaries of the top executives have a good percentage, in their compensation plan if they don't do good on ESG. And then
he's there.
Can you please?
Anybody don't talk about it. Just tell the person get 10
good. I think we got some, commercial break like the way we get on TV. So, so great. I think this is what I had to share. I know I wanted to stick to my time, and if Nimisha and Ninu allows, we will probably take some questions. Thank you so much for patience listening.
Thank you, Abhishek. This was really good. Quite an eye-opener, actually, and such an effortless attitude towards saying such important things that you feel like absorbing every point that you have actually conveyed today. Because we had a lot of people who were sending things on the chat, and some of them also sent it to us directly. We wanted to pick up one chat question from one of our persons who are attending here. Prachi was asking that if she is working in any company, how can she get the company that she's working for to start now looking for becoming ESG compliant? Is there a way we can actually tell them? Is there an example that we can give that another company in India actually became ESG compliant and thus made better profits? Is there a way out? Anything you can suggest?
So Prachi, I will probably share. Thanks for asking this question, and probably this also allows to talk about my journey and my company's journey. And probably this will give you a perspective because we are 8 years old company, so we are very young as well. So when we started CSR sustainability journey, obviously CSR came naturally because CSR has 2% and that's mandated. See, one of the biggest driver you need to have is your chairman, the CEOs, right? And these are the people who will actually has to live with it, not just preach on it, right? So your leadership buying, how do we say, right? Until unless they make it real, people will not believe it, right? And if the leadership buying is the first priority, so you have to go to your leadership. I was fortunate because my CEO and my chairman was very much bought into this agenda from the very first year of our company. And that's why I moved from marketing. I worked with marketing for 12 years in IBM, Oracle, and my current company to set up this function. And so the first thing, leadership buying. The second is that how do you create this as something like, not as a compliance in your company, right? We use a technique called push and pull, right? So push is when you try to make it a mandatory and all, and pull is where you do campaigns, you do a lot of canvassing, a lot of talking, a lot of presentation, giving time people to start believing in it. So have the pull strategy, then the push strategy, right? Have the carrot strategy, then the stick strategy, right? That's the second thing you'll have to do. The third is that getting your volunteers, getting your grounds, your soldiers, your foot soldiers in a large number, getting them to kind of become your advocate champions, right? That's very important. So you have to do a lot of internal work before you go external. These are all internal works you have to. Then you need to have a good communication strategy, right? And that's what, you need to have people like, experiential people like Nimisha and other who are going to be your communication brand ambassador, because you need to create a lot of collateral, a lot of communications around it, a lot of social around it. So you need to have that stream ready for you. And the most important is that there should be a long-term vision and plan. So when we started into the 2015, we didn't talk about what we want to do in 2015 or 2016, but what we want to do by 2020. And now we are saying what we want to do in 2030. So have a long-term vision, long-term plan. Your vision and plan has to be at least 5 years. And then you break it year by year, that how it is. The other important tip I want to give you is that run it like a business function. Don't run it like an add-on function, right? How a business runs: numbers, data, yearly targets, yearly goals, how much you achieve, how much you not achieve. Run it like a proper business function. And I always advise this to my friends and to my colleagues, my teammates, that see, when you are a sustainability CSR person, your one eye should be focused on society, environment, outside, but the other eye should focus also on the company's growth. So how sustainability is good for your company, unless you establish, Prachi, people will not take you so much seriously, or not. They have not taken me seriously, rather. So how much I will become relevant to business, right? When the customers are there, how I am using sustainability story to kind of wow my customers, how I am contributing to the growth of the company. Could be hiring, could be reducing, attrition, could be attracting new customers, could be having a brand presence on social and on website. All of this, once you kind of make this a healthy mix, this is what I did. I'm not preaching as like somebody should do, but this is exactly what I did. And that combination worked for me. And today, the way I am treated, because this function report is the CEO of the company, is because I have blended myself with the business, right? As well as the blended with my NGOs and communities and all. So these are a few things which I learned. I wanted to share. Hope it's useful for you, Prachi.
This is really good, really good. Abhishek, is it possible that if anybody wants to want to get in touch with you, LinkedIn would be a good format, good platform for getting in touch?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Nimisha. So you can reach me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, great. This will be lovely. This is for all the audiences who are here tuned in right now. Abhishek can be reached out to in case you are very interested to ask him something very focused. He probably will be able to reply to you with some examples as well. So feel free, you can get in touch with him on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for your time. I know this was the third talk that you gave, but it was so full of insight. It just does not come across as if you were tired at all. Yeah, maybe you feel the josh of saying things which will make a difference, and that energizes you in the same way that it has energized us. Thank you so much, Abhishek.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. I would invite you, in case you feel you would like to listen to any other speakers, you can. Some of the greatest ones are just like you, are part of the panel. If you would feel like tuning in right now or tune in a little later also, we would really welcome you, Abhishek.
No, I will definitely be around, so don't worry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we have a small virtual memento for you. So can we present it? Nimisha and I am also inviting Umang. So this we are also, wishing this a very big stage, and we are going to present it now.
Abhishek ji, a virtual award, part of our appreciation for you.
Thank you. It's really, this looks really nice.
Thank you so much, Abhishek.
Thank you so much for your time and all your insight. And you are not, mentioning other brands, but you have shared your journey and very deep steps to get there. That was very, helpful for every one of us. So thank you so much, and we can move to our next speaker. Nimisha, could you please invite our next speaker now?
For everyone who's tuned in right now, you are here in the virtual session, which is the 5th edition of the Social Town Talk Series, International Conference on ESG and NetZero. The person who spoke to us just now is Mr. Abhishek, who gave such great examples out of our real life and made it relevant for us in the year 2023 and ahead. And the one message that I would tell from part of his speech to everybody else is that don't just look at it just one initiative of being ESG compliant. Look at it as a long-term goal and ensure that if in your case, your company needs to be ESG compliant, it should be a profitable, sustainable growth for them as well. And that is when you will be taken much more seriously. So we will start this trajectory of ours with Abhishek's words. I would like to now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Balakumar Thangavelu. He will speak to us on the topic of why ESG and how can an organization start the journey towards ESG, making it a lot more focused and pinpointed from where Mr. Abhishek had left us. I would now welcome Mr. Balakumar. And just a few lines about Mr. Balakumar here for our audiences. Mr. Balakumar Thangavelu is a seasoned ESG CSR leader. He has very strong expertise in this field, a leading employee volunteering, managing social impact initiatives aligned with business and sustainability goals. He has 18 plus years of cross-regional and cross-functional experience across all roles in business development, IT project delivery, ESG, employee engagement, CSR, and has a proven track record of using excellent personal, communication, and organization skills to lead and improve ESG practice efficiencies and corporate volunteering. Mr. Balakumar is interested in research, design, execution of path-breaking, outcome-oriented volunteering programs, creating greater impact to the community, which is amazing for all of us because we are also on the same path, maybe just starting off right now. Mr. Balakumar is currently serving as the Director of CSR and Head of Employee Volunteering India, Global Lead ESG at Cognizant. I welcome you, Mr. Balakumar. Such a privilege to be inviting you here to speak today. All your insights, please do roll it out for us. We are all yours. Welcome, Mr. Balakumar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nimisha. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Yes,
Thank you so much. That's super exciting introduction. I know you every time you set the bar very high. I don't know if you're able to match up to your energy when we deliver the speech, but we will try our best. And after like Eric and Abhishek, the veterans in the industry have delivered their insights, right? I'll try to, I'm actually like going back a step, taking a step back and going to the basics of ESG and its evolution. But I understood from Nino that like there are like participants from different category and different genres. So I thought like this area of setting the background and where we stand and how do we all take up first step is something that I wanted to do it. So thank you so much, Nimisha and Nino, for this opportunity, and thanks participants across the globe. I see a lot of participants from everywhere around the world. So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to people around the world. I'll probably, I think I wanted to share my screen. Nino, if you can give access to share my screen
Yes,
as
so
a
you are
host.
a co-host now, so you can.
But it says the host is disabled.
No,
Attendee screen
I
sharing.
think you left us in between the.
Oh yeah, I
Yes.
came back. I had to, my microphone was not working, so I had to.
Now you're all set to start.
Okay. Let me know when you see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Is my screen visible? All good?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, how many of you in this call have seen a dodo? Any? Uh, I am not able to see the participants, but any virtual thumbs up that's possible? I'll
Somebody
probably
saying,
see if there
not
are
seen, heard of it.
not seen or heard of it.
Hearing it for the first time. Another
Not
answer.
seen or hearing it the first time. That's good. Few might have heard, but few might not have heard. And I think Dr. Shaik shows a thumbs up. But anyway, that's good. So I'll go back to my presentation.
Extinct and trying to revive.
Oh yeah. So none of us in this call definitely would have had a chance to see the dodo. The dodo bird, it used to be in 17th century, and its livelihood used to be in the Madagascar Islands. And there is a reason why I'm talking about this bird. Uh, while this bird is extinct and it's no more, and all that we could see is its skeleton, or like something like stuffed in the museums right now across the world. That's what we have right now. But what is it like, so many species like dodo have lost their lives in the evolution of this universe and the earth, right? But why specifically dodo I wanted to talk about here is that there is an association of dodo bird with a tree type, a tree called Calvaria tree, and that tree is the family of timber. It comes, it's part of the timber family. And this Calvaria tree is, the trees that are there right now are all like 100 years plus. But the trees that are there currently, which is live and active, like which has life in it, right? Ninu, like just in case if you don't hear me, if there is any break or anything, right? Just let me know or call me on my mobile, because I'm sharing. I don't know if people are listening or I don't see anything. I just see my screen, so I might be
So,
talking. Sometimes I may be talking to myself, not knowing that I was thrown out of the window. So
Perfect.
just pause me or give me an alert, okay?
sure, sure,
So far
sure.
so good, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this Calvaria tree, right? Like the tree is flowering and it gets fruit, and the fruit gets fallen down and it's getting planted, and it's not growing. And this particular tree's fruits, the seeds are not germinating anywhere around the world. The scientists have done so much of research and so many places that they have tried to do and plant, and then so many types of soil, but it doesn't never grow. The reason is, after a lot of research, they realized that when the tree gets the fruit, right, unless and until the bird dodo eats the fruit, and it goes into its digestive system and then comes as a seed through its poop, unless and until that fruit and the seed goes through the digestive juices of dodo's bird, it doesn't get the germination power. So the trees doesn't germinate at all unless until it goes into dodo's mouth and comes out of its poop. So that's how the world is so intact, and there is a reason for every being out there, and most of us, a lot of us, and everybody in the earth are, maybe it might be a little bit harsh, but I don't have to, I don't have another alternate word to use, nothing but ruthless. So we've been ruthless in terms of using the resources that we have everywhere around the world, and it's depleting. And Abhishek had been giving phenomenal examples, right? Like when we get an Amazon package delivered, why is so much of plastic? And we also see, yesterday I got to see a picture of a dolphin, which died just because of a water bottle's ring got stuck into its nose, and it was not even able to open its nose, or like the mouth, and then it was dead, and it was found just because that water bottle ring went inside its mouth and got stuck. So uh, we all have actions to do. We all have actions, more and more actions to do, and that's why people like Nino and Nimisha and all of them have come forward, and all participants have come forward here to see how can we contribute, how can we make this world a better place, and safe and secure place for the generations to come and for us to live around. So this Dodo story is very, very, very important story in terms of sustainability. Whenever we talk about sustainability, this bird and the tree, Calvaria tree plant, I mean, the tree is directly associated. Everything, right? Like even COVID has an association with the biodiversity, the bat and its existence, and it say that like COVID, the roots are bats, right? So everything has some existence. The swine flu influenza, it came from pig. So everything has connect. We talk about the chaos theory and the butterfly effect, right? Like somewhere a butterfly flutters at one end of the world, and it could create a tornado or like a cyclone in the other part of the world. So that is the relation for everything. So how did it all start, right? Like when the world wars were happening, and we were losing a lot of resources in terms of people, in terms of planet, a lot of depletion were happening. So that's where a lot of countries joined together and then formed United Nations in 1945, and then all of them said like, hey, let us all form, let us all come together, let us all form a treaty, and then let us all work towards making this whole globe a place for living for each one of us. There, let us all join together to work in a harmony to make sure this world exists for us and beyond. I don't know how many of you have got to see a video that I got to recently see. A dinosaur just walks into one of the UN conclave, and then it just takes up the mic and then it starts speaking. For us, it said like the dinosaur speaking, right? Like for us, there was a reason for us to going extinct. A meteor came, hit the earth, and then we were extinct. But you humans don't need a meteor. You yourself are trying to go extinct. So don't go extinct. You have ways to survive, and you have ways to make the world survive for years to come. And don't become extinct by yourself, was the message that a dinosaur was speaking in one of the very, very, I think it was one United Nations sent video, beautiful video. I didn't have that, like else I could have played that video. So given that like United Nations is doing a lot of efforts, putting in a lot of framework for everybody, every country across the member nations to start actioning upon. And first time when the word ESG came is in 2006, when the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment (PRA) report was published, and that's when like this new word called environmental, social, and governance was picking up, was talked about. Like how can organizations do a responsible investment, and how can organizations do responsible business? So that's when like in 2006 United Nations this ESG as a word that came in, and then followed up on like every 5 years, 10 years, like now and then United Nations, the member nations keep meeting for multiple actions and multiple conventions. And in 2015 in the convention, that's where the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, evolved. and 17 goals were defined, and sub goals were defined, the target indicators were defined. It's a beautiful way to interlink the 17 goals for all of us to ensure that we live behind a safe world for generations to come, right? So that's the little bit of a timeline evolution of ESG. And beyond that, right, why and who demands exactly, like I'll again pick back to Abhishek's words, right? The investors. First example that again Abhishek gave, right? Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock. uh, every large organizations have two types of investors, right? Like institutional investors and individual investors. Institutional investors are the large ones who have like, you know, 100 thousands of shares of that company. They have like 30%, 50%, 60% stake of that company. And these investors, like BlackRock, Vanguard, and all of these companies, right? They have started looking upon the companies that they're investing, because their investors have started asking them, hey, I'm putting in money into your organization. Are you putting my money into an organization which is socially responsible, which is doing the right thing for the world? Or am I putting my money into a different organization which is unethical, which is not treating its employee well, which is emitting a lot of carbon and depleting the climate changes around the, or polluting the places around its existence? So the individual investors into the institutional large institutions, right? They've started asking, and these large institutional investors who are putting in money into the large organizations have started clearly asking, boss, publish me a report where how is your environmental actions or like climate actions are doing. How are you taking care of the environment around you, and how are you treating your employees, how are you treating your supply chain, and how are you treating and how are your employees are treating it. So the investors have started asking it, and regulators have started coming in. Regulators, right, from like flowing from UN SDGs, United Nations, the member nations have started. Member nations have to report their SDG progress every year to the United Nations. And in India perspective, Niti Aayog, a central government agency, is the responsible organization to measure the progress of our SDGs, and then we are every year the report is being published in terms of goal 4, goal 5, goal 7, where do we progress, where do we lag, and which is red, amber, green. So all of this. So regulators have started coming in, and it's across the globe, right? Like the government organizations have started asking, the organizations in my company, are we doing ethical business? And in terms of again Indian perspective, Indian Companies Act of in 2014, India is the first country in the world to regulate corporate social responsibility. Give back 2% of your net profit back to the community if you fulfill the other criterias. So the regulatory body has come in and started pushing in, uh, bring in change in the way you do your business. And clients say, I'm part of an organization, and I do a lot of work for my clients, and my clients have started asking me, while I see my supply chain, I am a supplier to another client, and my client is asking me, am I partnering with a corporate social or a socially responsible organization? My clients have started asking, if I don't report, if I don't do carbon accounting in my company, my client is facing a problem because his supply chain, I'm part of a supply chain for him. And if I don't do carbon accounting, and if I don't do actions to address my carbon emissions, it's going to impact directly to my client because I am a supply chain to him. So clients have started pushing in, and every RFP that we start receiving, right, like request for proposal, when we bid for a new project, right, everybody has started asking in, what is your climate action? Do you have an ESG report? What is your health and wellness program for your employees? What is your diversity, equity, and inclusion program that you have, and whom you hire? All of these have started coming in. So my clients have started pushing in. And finally, employees. Again, going quoting Abhishek here, right? There are like multiple surveys and feedback that surveys and studies that we have done, from McKinsey to World Economic Forum, that says like 65 to 70% of the generation Z, which is like millennials and more, right, they've preferred to work in an socially responsible organization beyond the money and everything, right? Is my organization that I'm going to join is socially responsible? That's how my employees and employees part of the organization have started looking upon that. Is my organization doing ethical business, and so on, right? So if you see, the demand or the push is coming from everywhere: investors, regulators, clients, and employees. and there is no choice. Like Abhishek again said, right? You can't run away anymore. There were days that organizations were using, or like corporate sustainability or social responsibility or ESG for that matter, all of these, right? Like were like a support function or a nice to have thing in the organizations, but no more to no more are those days. Here it is time where it is must to have. It is core business functionality. It's a core business function, corporate function, which is actually amplifying your business, amplifying your brand, and amplifying your impact to the community and your customers and business and your end users beyond. The point is that it has become a must to have, and we cannot run away, organizations cannot run away. So that's where like the demand comes in, and it comes in. So what is ESG? For people who are new to ESG, I just wanted to give that background. It's just a framework embedded into organization strategy to consider the needs and ways which generate value to organization stakeholders, all stakeholders that we talked about, right? Like employees, customers, suppliers, and financiers. So I wanted to just a little bit deep dive into the aspects of E, S, and G. So under environment, what all our focus is climate change. Yes, 1.5 degree C, the Paris Agreement we have, like because of that, we have the United Nations says that like 1.5 degree C is increasing year on year, and because of that, the glaciers are melting, and because of glaciers melting, the seawater rise is happening, and all of a sudden, like Abhishek said, somewhere who has never seen snow is seeing snow somewhere, and somewhere in the summer we are getting rains uh, earthquakes in Turkey, and so many things, right? Like natural disasters and catastrophes we are seeing again and again. So there is a reason behind, right? Like nature doesn't do anything without a purpose. So there is a reason behind. And what is the root cause? Somewhere somebody something has not in the right way. So how an organization should focus on the climate action? So how can their greenhouse gas emissions, nothing but carbon emissions, first step are the accounting carbon emissions. Do they have a methods to calculate what my carbon emission that comes from my organization? Is there a carbon accounting is the first step? If they have not started carbon accounting, can they start carbon accounting? And within that, like greenhouse gas emissions, we have three different ways that we can measure, like scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. What is the direct emission that I generate? What is the emissions that comes from my suppliers? What is the carbon emission that my suppliers use it? Like there are like three different carbon emissions. I don't want to go deep into that, but first stage, are you measuring your carbon emission? Are you doing carbon accounting? And after that, what are the steps you are taking to reduce your carbon emission? Biodiversity loss. You big plant, you buy a few acres of land, and then you kill all the like forestation or the vegetations and plantations there. You build a new factory there. You kill the biodiversity there. Is there a way you're going to rebuild the biodiversity in that place? We do not know. Deforestation, pollution, energy efficiency, water management, landfill. For example, right? Like I come from an IT company, and which is like Cognizant, and at Cognizant, right? Like after COVID stuck, we gave desktops to everybody around the world. We People who are working from office, right? They carried their desktops to their home, and they were starting to work from home. And after some time, we had to replace the desktops. We all replaced all desktops with laptops for our employees. And all of a sudden, there was like 50-60,000 of desktops piled up in our office space. And typically it used to go for e-waste. And that's when like COVID time, we realized that like there were 120 million, there's a report from UNICEF, 120 million students across the world were deprived of education because they did not have access to devices or technology, or even the device, right? So that's when we started doing a device donation program. All those like 60,000 devices we have donated for educational institutions across the globe, so that one, we kept out of landfill is one. Second, we were able to provide education for the for the people who were not, they were opportunity deprived. We enabled the opportunity. Third, we extended the life of the use, like Abhishek said, like circular economy, right? We extended the use of the desktop by another 2-3 more years, which helped in manufacturing few more new devices. We did the mathematics, and then we understand that like donating 50,000 or extending the life of 50,000 desktops for 2 more years is equivalent to planting 5,000 more trees or taking 5,000 cars out of the roads. So that's how like the impact is, we it might look very small, but it has a greater impact. So environment focus on all of these things, and social focuses on hiring and training. Who are you hiring? Hiring from tier 2 1, tier T, tier 3, and who are you training? Are you upskilling your employees? Are you how is your training given to the new employees? How is your retention of your employees managed? Employee safety and working conditions, diversity, equity and inclusion, conflict management, supply chain. I may be having a policy to not have child labor, but my suppliers, do they have that policy? Do they comply? Do they have an anti slavery policy within them, and all of that, right? Like comes under the social, which is like human rights aspect towards. And finally, governance, preventing bribery, corruption, ethics and compliance of working within the organization. Do I have a whistleblower policy? Do I have my employees given the empowerment to call something, saying that like within my organization somebody is doing business not in the right way, or there is an harassment that is happening? Can I call? There is an ethics and compliance helpline policy developed, and cybersecurity and data privacy policies practice followed. So this is the overall aspects of E, S, and G, and everything has a method and metrics to measure and then see where it goes. Again, like Abhishek said, uh, the 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 leadership team have to start looking at the metrics, and then look at every year or every quarter, every half year, look into it. Where are we progressing? Where do we stay? So that's brief about ESG. And ESG and SDGs have direct alignment. So whatever you do with environment, social, and governance, all the 17 goals are aligned to what is E, S, and G towards. So given that, I know with the paucity of time, I'll take like next 5 more minutes to wrap. 7:15, there should have been a break, or like I'll just wrap it in 5 minutes. So how and where do I start, right? Like now I know, or most of you might be knowing, where do I what is ESG and the background and all of it, right? Where do I start and how do I start? That's where the first step towards ESG journey starts with your materiality assessment. So materiality assessment is nothing but a 7-step process where you can clearly identify your what is important to your stakeholders and what is important to your business. You define that, and then you take your steps towards the ESG journey, because you have E, S, and G. You have multiple aspects, right? You have water, you have air, you have land, you have uh, and in S, you have diversity and inclusion, you have human rights, you have supplier, and in governance you have data privacy, cyber security, ethics and compliance. So many things are there. Where do we start? Which one do we focus on? That's where this materiality assessment comes into place. First, identify all your internal and external stakeholders, conduct an initial stakeholder outreach, just give them an orientation, and identify and prioritize what you want to measure. And then design your materiality survey. How do you want to do the survey? Launch your survey and start collecting insights, analyze your insights, and put insights into action. So this is how the 7 steps for a materiality assessment should happen. And end of the day, right? Like once your materiality assessment is done, you'll clearly be able to chart out this one, right? Like on your y-axis you have stakeholder interest, and on your x-axis you have their business impact. So what is important for my business and what is important for my stakeholders, that comes into the right top corner. This is nothing but your stakeholder importance and business important. For this organization, this is a sample one. Number one comes under climate change and energy use. Number two comes as supply chain management. Number three is governance and ethics and compliance. Number four is employee engagement. So this is how, after end of materiality assessment, you will be able to exactly pinpoint and understand where do I start, or which one should I start focusing on, which are my low hanging fruits. I also will be able to understand, but which are the ones which I should really give much focus on. And if you see, right, like advancing the sustainability or championing education and innovation, doing business sustainability, and empowering our people. So materiality assessment is the first place to start. And probably next few minutes to quickly in my insights is, there are multiple frameworks around the world, and there are like general frameworks around like global reporting initiative, GRI, and sustainability accounting standards board, SASB, and which is like getting integrated, and we call it as a value reporting framework, value reporting initiative, and all of them are coming in. And UNGC, United Nations Global Compact. If you are not able to have so many things of 17 SDG, 17 goals, and multiple parameters under ESG, UNGC comes with 10 small candid under environment, social, and governance, all three put together. To begin with, just 10 parameters are there under United Nations Global Compact. And then you start adopting UNGC. Every year they ask you for a communications of progress report. You submit them. That's the first step you can begin with. Globally starting reporting your progress in terms of ESG. And in Indian context, it's BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. The top 2000 incorporated companies are supposed to submit. The regulatory body, as CBS, putting in a pressure or like putting in the regulation that the top 2000 companies have to start submitting the BRSR report in India. Similarly, like other corporates, other global regulators are also pushing in the other parts of the world. And in terms of climate action and environment, it's Carbon Disclosure Project and Task Force on climate related financial disclosures. For example, CDP and all, right, like Carbon Disclosure Project. Why should I submit my carbon? Why should I start accounting, do carbon accounting, and why should I disclose my carbon emissions under CDP initiative? Because see, for example, I run a company called ABC, and I'm a supplier to Microsoft, for example, right? Microsoft has partnered with, or like goes to CDP and then gets a report saying that like what is the carbon accounting report for the ABC company whom I'm looking at to partner with, or who is my supplier. And CDP is the place where like everybody, like I can also go and see, and others also can go and see. So it's a place where all of us go and report by carbon emission. So invariably, right, like I said in the beginning, we don't have a choice now. Like if I have to be doing bigger business, scale my business, and start doing growing my organization, I obviously have to start reporting, doing carbon accounting, and then putting into the carbon disclosure project, and then they should others will start witnessing it. And TCFD is another like framework that's given for the climate relation disclosures. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir, you are, but
Okay, I heard some
breaking,
disturbance.
yeah, and some nonsense were there.
Okay,
But we can.
so okay, thank you. And the science-based target initiative (SBTI) is another framework. And then like we have Amazon's the climate pledge for the climate actions and so on and so forth. So this this you know frameworks, a lot of frameworks are there. uh, to just summarize, right, like start with your materiality assessment, understand what is important for your stakeholders and what is important for your business, and then you start picking up these, either one of these framework, and start reporting it. And then uh, you will not have a choice nothing but reporting also. You don't have a choice. And one thing that I wanted to leave behind is that, like when we were talking about diversity and inclusion, right, if you would have seen in the presentation, right, like you would have seen the closed caption or the subtitles was coming at the bottom. From the beginning you would have seen this is nothing that I have not done anything new. It's nothing but the PowerPoint as such. Microsoft has provided an option. So if you see, I've just like exited my slide share mode, and on the slideshow menu, if you see, there is a checkbox, always use subtitles. The moment you use always use subtitles, it will automatically start picking up the subtitles for the presentation that I'm doing, and it'll also pick the picks the voice of the other people in the call as well. uh, this is one way I am demonstrating inclusion when I present here, right? Like what if somebody in this call has a loss of hearing, or like they were not able to listen, and they cannot listen, right? Like hearing impaired person is attending the call, or today there is a infection and they could not hear. So these are like some of the ways that all of us have to become, all of us are accountable, right? It is not just corporates and all these frameworks, right? All of us are accountable, and all of us are every one of us have to make actions to make this world much more beautiful and better place for all of us to live and for the generations to come. With that, I'll stop here. I hope it was helpful, and I would like to if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take it up. And thank you so much, Ninu, for this opportunity once again. Fantastic hearing from others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the real life examples and the stories. And I thoroughly, enjoyed your way of presentation from the beginning. And do we have any questions for Bala sir? Umang or others here? We have Umang here. He's going to speak tomorrow. Umang, are you here with us?
Yes, absolutely. I'm here. Thank you so much. It was very, very insightful, very interesting. And, with our BRSR format having been prescribed and, we are transitioning towards reporting. But, in my advisory, we do, work towards corporate sustainability, and reporting assessment is the first step we start from. So my question is, uh, a lot of this, remains in a compliance concern. ESG or sustainability is not compliance. And I say constantly, it's a journey, it's not an end. It is not finished by just filing your report to the regulator and you're done with it. So, can you share some insight or experience how, and of course, including materiality, seven pillars, factors that you mentioned? How do we, what is your business case to organizations to transition towards corporate sustainability as a goal, and not just reporting?
Yeah, CSR is doing good, but ESG is becoming good. So it's a part of life. It should become the way you look at everything into an organization, right from your hiring till retiring, or everything like integration and everything comes into place. So to your question, right, like it is more about it starts with education. We don't have a like I was telling, right, the investors have started questioning. You don't have a choice at all now, that do I do it next year? No, you don't have a choice. The investors will not invest on you next year. So you have to publish it, you have to start accounting it, and you have to start putting in. But internal stakeholders, right, like, well, there is an extra push from the external stakeholders. Internal stakeholders are a little bit hard to crack. I think it all starts with education, right? A lot of education has to get into it, and stories like the dodo, how it's really has killed a family of tree, killing and eating dodo has killed a family tree family, right? That's where like people have to start realizing it, that everybody is accountable and every organization is accountable. It is not just you grow, you earn, you make profit, you put your numbers on Wall Street, and NSE BSE is not enough. And like Abhishek said, the social activism will start coming in. People will start asking. They will start like stepping out of this organization, and they'll during COVID, that great resignation started happening. Right? Like great attrition started happening. All corporates felt like huge attrition rates. Sometime or other, like if you are not running your business in an ethical way, socially responsible way, I'm not going to be part of your organization. That's not very long, according to me. And these stakeholders will push, and organizations don't have a choice at all. So to me, to your question, education right now, saying that be start right now, educate them to say that like start right now, either be a pioneer or you'll be pushed to do it. So this is the right time, right momentum. You can sit on the segway, and then you can just zoom, and then you can become the pioneer, and you can set standards, you can set benchmarks, because since it's evolving. If you say ESG, right, like you have so many things. G, you have so many things. Yes, you don't have benchmarks. Giving back to community, what is the benchmark that we have? Though Indian government says 2% of CSR, there are like 12 CSR provisions. Who sets what benchmark there? Like I provide like 100 crore rupees, or like I'm qualified for 1 crore rupee. For 1 crore, I construct 10 classrooms. What is the benchmark? What is the outcome? There's no benchmark. So there are a lot of scope. So I think the organizations like consulting companies, like all of you, right, like people who are there, so you should go educate them and then tell them that like this is the time. If you miss this moment, you're going to be running behind. You'll have to do a lot of catch up, and it is easy to catch up, but uh, running first and being a pioneer is a privilege. So understand that you're privileged right now to run fast, and then make others come behind you, right? You become the leader there. So that's where it is. Those are like my 2 cents, Umang. I hope it was reasonable.
Thank you, Palasan and Umang. Nimsha, I think we have some questions in the chat. Can you please take it? Bhavya, would you like to unmute yourself and ask?
Hi, good evening. Hello, sir. This is Bhavya here. So, my question was in terms of livelihood, how do we connect with ESG? Like the livelihoods that the social enterprises provide to the underprivileged in segment, how do we connect that with the ESG part of the corporates or the organization?
See, from if I'm trying to get your question right, you are trying to do some livelihood improvement, and how do you think that it has a connection with ESG? Is that a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's straightforward. It is straightforward, and it's straightforward linkage, right? Like giving back to community is part of the ESG, like under social. Rather beyond taking care of your employees and your suppliers, you're supposed to take care of the community and the livelihood around you. That's part of the S component under ESG, and that's where the corporate social responsibility integrates into the ESG component. So CSR is part of yes. So that's why I keep telling, like when I talk to corporate and other leaders, right, I say that like corporate social responsibility is not something a different business unit. It is part of your ESG, and under yes it is there, and it is no separate action that is there. It is part of your yes, giving back to community. And whatever you do, right, again, a lot of education is required for the CSR leaders and corporates, and everybody is trying to do good things, but are we doing the right thing for the livelihood improvement around us? So is there a say, for example, right, there are like metrics that needs to be defined. For example, I do a skilling program for the women in a neighborhood community. What my initial objective is that, can I make them self-sustainable? Can I skill them and then give them a job, or they can run an entrepreneurship for them by, say, probably the some form of like candle making or like some handicrafts making. So can I make them? This year, I skilled 1,000 women in the rural communities. Next year, should I go to another community and then should I train another 1,000 women? Or should I look at last year I trained 1,000 women. Out of the 1,000 women, 500 women started earning 100 rupees per day and their livelihood got improved. Should I focus on that 500 women one more time, year two also, and help them to move from 500 rupees per day to 1,000 rupees per day? That is how the difference it all makes, right? Like where do we focus on, where do that livelihood improvement comes in? So this year I focused on women. Should I focus on the elderly people next year on the same livelihood or the same community around my factory? So you have multiple beneficiaries around you, right? From you know a, 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 a kid in the womb till an elderly person in the deathbed. Everybody is a beneficiary around the livelihood here, and everybody is a stakeholder. In fact, like it's not a beneficiary. So Anshul Gupta from Goonj, founder of Goonj, he says that like there is no word called beneficiary. He says everybody is a stakeholder. All of us get subsidies. You get subsidies and driving a car on a road, you pay road tax, you get subsidy there. You get income tax subsidy, you get LPG subsidy, then you are a stakeholder. It's not that you are in the upper hand and you're giving. So everybody is a stakeholder in the ecosystem. So look at all the stakeholders out there for us, and then can we give a reasonable impact in improving their livelihood from level 1 to level 2. It's not level 0 to level 1, like level 1 to level 2, level 2 to level 3, and then the whole ecosystem grows, right? So uh, it's a direct correlation. ESG has to give back to community, and then giving back to community, what do you do in livelihood? It's up to your policy and CSR charter and all of that. I hope that answers, Bhavya.
Thank you so much, sir.
Another question from Prachi. Prachi, would you like to unmute yourself and speak?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and excellent energy. We have got wonderful training from all these experts. Actually, I would like to know about how we can integrate all these things.
One step at a time. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. Exactly, one step at a time, and understand, what is the topmost burning issue, and we'll have
Okay.
to start doing firefighting, and one at a time. All of them are related. Like I said, 17 sustainable goals. All of them have one-to-one link to it. All of them are like interlinked goals. So one step at a time. When you focus on one, when you focus and work on one sustainable development goal, right? It invariably touches at least 3 to 4 other SDGs.
Yes, yes,
You'll
I
not
agree. I
be
completely
releasing
agree.
it. So
Yes, yes.
so all of them are, for that matter, it is interlinked already by design. Like the dodo and Calvaria tree, right? Again, I'm going back to that. It is interlinked, and we don't. It is already integrated, well knitted. So it is just that like realization that we all should have on what actions that we are doing, and how do we make one step at a time.
Yeah, and one more question, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity again. Actually, I would like to know about partnership for the goal. How we can integrate partnership for the goal with other goals.
Partnership, I didn't get that. Can you repeat that question?
We have one SDG goal, partnership for the goal.
Yeah.
So, if you want to collaborate with different companies, suppose I am handling two companies. I have my
Mhm.
company. So, I would like to know about partnership for the goal. How we can integrate with these other SDGs. Is there any trick or idea?
No, there is no trick here at all. It is all, at least for the UN SDGs, right? It has been very well defined. The sub goals and the target indicators are very clearly defined for all of us. A lot of time, right? Like when we do social impact programs, we find hard to identify the metrics to measure. Unlike that, in SDGs, target indicators are clearly defined. You know what metrics to measure, and everything are already interlinked, and it is about like partnerships, right? Like you and I talk, somebody is interested to partner with me, I'm a cognizant. Like today I said, like I'm donating 50,000 devices. Somebody is interested to come back and ask me, hey, I am helping students in the rural children to do online classes. I don't have devices. You come and ask me. For me it's an environmental action. For you it is an education activity action for improving that in that community. So it is all about connecting the dots and connecting the right dots. So it is not just connecting the dots, right? Like connecting the right dots. So uh, uh, we have to be open. uh, I think a little bit of a change has come in, where a lot of us in the corporate world as well as NGOs have started coming forward to collaborate. Collaboration is key to success. Earlier there were like a lot of hidden agenda, and people were like really hiding things what they were, or not were really ready to publish things. But today, it's publishing is not just to brand. Publishing has taken a different persona, right? Like publishing and putting things out. I started looking into a different way. Earlier I thought it's for just for branding. No, it is to inspire people. Even they could do this. What I did 50,000 devices today. Somebody hearing from me, or if I say like, how did I made it happen? I know when I put a post in LinkedIn saying that like I donated 50,000 devices. Somebody from two corporates reached out to me saying that, hey, give us, we also have 10,000, 20,000 devices. How did you make that magic possible? And I helped them, and it happened, right? Like, so start communicating. Abhishek, again taking back Abhishek's point, right? Like communication is very key. When communication happens, people will start coming and reaching out to you. Be open to collaborate, and when you collaborate, partnerships happen and impact happens.
Yes, yes, that's great. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So there are
All
like a
right.
lot of questions that are coming in.
Lot within
Interest
Yes,
of
a
time.
segment of time. Yeah. Uh,
I do have a question.
yes. Can you ask it very fast because our next speaker is
All
also
right.
waiting. Yeah. Yes, please go ahead.
All right.
Yes, this will be our
Yeah.
last.
Thank you, sir. I commend you for your wonderful thoughts. Actually, I did not join earlier, but then I want to know or ask if this can be related to CBR, as in disability study in human relation. Can you apply this in community-based rehabilitation, persons with disability, if you want to impact this knowledge in that area sector? Can it work like that?
If I heard your question right, like if this model or if this frameworks can be used in community improvement
Yes,
projects,
rehabilitation. Yeah.
community rehabilitation projects and projects on disability, right? I,
Yes, yes.
see, these frameworks that I shared at last of the slide is more focusing on the general like publishing of your ESG, and that's what like large organizations are looking forward from you. But I think for specific projects around community rehabilitation and disability, right, you have to look at the
Yes.
project level, and you have to have your clear definition of the project. What do you want to see as an output versus outcome, and how do you want to measure the outcome? What are the metrics that needs to be, that will help us to measure the outcome? Those are really really important in that aspect. Like what I see, these are like very large frameworks, and for your community rehabilitation projects it should be a little bit one that needs to be looked into at project level, and at project level definitions should be done, and not at this scale is what I feel. I'm available as well, like and Nimisha might ask this question, but I'll put that again. So Balakumar Tangavelu is my full name, and I'm available on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to anybody can reach out
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
and I'll be happy to respond.
All right.
I'll put it on the chat also. We can take
Okay.
it offline also. I'll respond there.
Yes. I can take it that form, and then we link up. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bala sir. Now it's time for presenting our virtual memento. So I'm inviting you to the stage and presenting it now. Here we
That's the
go.
sustainable way, right? Like rather printing and wasting a lot, plastic. So this is more sustainable way.
Yes, can we go now?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Balakumar sir. Really good. Connecting the dots is not the right way. Connecting the right dots is the right way. That I would like to take forward from here. It's a good message for everybody that if you understand what you are doing, there probably will be a different perspective to the person who's receiving it. And so we are connecting the right dots in our own way. But if you can do it in a measurable form, we will be able to do it faster. Probably make it a privilege now if we are a forerunner, or else we will be pushed into it. And I take that message very seriously. Balakumar sir, really, really insightful session. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir. So our audiences are so full of questions today. I think a lot of them will connect with you even offline and probably during LinkedIn. We would request you to just take it up, sir. Anything that you feel is relevant, it will inspire them onto the journey of becoming ESG compliant in a way and get started from there. So with your permission, I would like to now welcome our next speaker. You are also welcome to be a part of the panel, sir, and you can ask questions and just enjoy a little bit, sir. Thank you, Balakumar, sir. For the ones who've tuned in just now, I want to tell you that you are a part of a virtual series right now. This is the International Conference on ESG and NetZero. And this is brought to you by the Social Town Talk Series. This amazing session today is now going to be ready with our next speaker, Starleen Sharma. A few lines about Starleen would be, Starleen Sharma is the co-founder and managing partner at Green Earth, a climate innovation and investment firm. She is also the founder of the Clean Tech Women's Innovation Network and climate editor for Business India Publications. As the founding CEO of AIC Sangam Innovation Foundation, Starleen was responsible for establishing India's first dedicated clean tech incubator and accelerator. Amazing this is, while simultaneously also leading in early stage clean tech investment at Sangam Ventures. We really would welcome Starleen here. Her insights would be so amazing. Welcome, Starleen.
Thank you, Nimisha, and thank you everyone for being here, especially on a Saturday evening. I've prepared a couple sloppy slides that I'll use for getting us through this discussion. But my thought really is that, and what I'll largely be talking about is, to build on our prior speaker, connecting the right dots is very important. Communication is very important. And with that, I think one of the things that's most important for a lot of us is the business case for why we need to be looking at investing in climate, investing in ESG, and how do we really make our constituents see that. And so I very much am focused on the Indian market. And I think that India is very much tied to how a lot of other developing markets are going to develop from a climate and ESG perspective. So I'm very much going to be speaking on why India can and must lead. And really looking at it from the perspective of trying to give a business case. And I'll try to keep my comments relatively short with the idea and hope that everybody else is able to ask questions and whatnot, because I think that that is the best way for all of us to learn, especially me. So let me see if I can get this into full screen. And is everybody able to see the screen, and is it on full screen now?
We can see your screen.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. So moving on from this sort of introductory slide, in 2019, India was ranked 168 out of 180 in terms of environmental performance. And a lot of times if we're walking around the streets in India, we do see that, but there's a lot of aspects of that that we don't see. 54% of India faces extreme water stress. 21 of the 30 most polluted cities are in India. 29.3% of land mass is already degraded, and 50% of global sanitation losses are or waste that's not recycled properly is actually coming from India. And all of these things have really significant economic consequences. A Niti Aayog study estimated that we lose 6% of GDP annually due to water scarcity and water quality. A World Bank study suggested that that's 8.5%. A UN study showed 2.5% of GDP loss due to land degradation, and that's not including the losses that we're seeing just from inappropriate land management and poor farming practices. And we could gain an additional 5.2% in GDP if we were just to look at what we can harvest from waste. And I actually think the numbers get a lot bigger than that. When we move beyond sort of where we're looking at waste as kind of easy inputs at this point in time. And so when we think about that, and we think about India having a goal of a $5 trillion economy by 2030, if we're losing out on up to 20% of our GDP every year just by not taking care of climate, we're already establishing that there's a business imperative to be looking at this. But the business imperative, I mean, these are very much more like government imperatives. Like a lot of times those numbers aren't seen at the business level. But India is one of the countries that will also be most economically harmed at the business, and that does trickle down to businesses. If businesses don't have water to operate, they shut down. If farmers don't have water, we don't have food, and food security is a huge risk for businesses as well as not just from an operations perspective. And so to avoid the worst impacts of climate change.
Sorry for interrupting you. So
Yes.
Bala sir is requesting, can you put in the slideshow mode, please, so that they can see your slide.
Sure. Sorry about that. I thought I had. Let's see. And that should not be there. This is the one that should get it to full screen.
Yes. You can hit F5. So he is giving you leads for that. Just hit F5. Yeah.
All right, I'm hitting. Let's see. On my computer, F5 is asking about dictation, which my team is probably happy I'm learning about. So, let's see.
Function plus F5.
Permission.
Welcome to VoiceOver. VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen and can be
Yes,
used to control
after that you can
use
see the
only a
slideshow.
keyboard.
Yeah.
If you already know how to use VoiceOver, press the wiki now. If you want to learn how to use VoiceOver, press the space bar now.
Okay, so moving on. India, if we really want to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, India really must lead. And when we start looking at what this means from an ESG perspective, right now, India has just recently crossed the threshold and become the largest population globally. We're expected to be 1.67 billion people by 2050. When we pair that with the expected economic growth that is projected for India, and India reaching the second largest economy globally by 2050, we end up seeing that we have a very large population with rapid economic development, and with that rapid aspirations in terms of what they're consuming and what that ends up doing from a carbon perspective. So the graph here is showing what happened in China as they reached economic growth. Very much the last couple years in India, barring 2020 COVID, was paralleling where China was in 2005. And so when you overlay the graphs, if India follows the same trajectory as China, India will use 70% of the global carbon budget by 2050. Which means it doesn't matter what happens in the US, it doesn't matter what happens in China, it doesn't matter what happens in Europe. If we don't manage to figure out what we're doing here in India, we fundamentally cannot stay below 2 degrees. And that is why India is the most important market for us to be looking at from a climate perspective and from an ESG perspective. So when we think about what this means for other developing economies, they will also be very much following the same trajectories as their economies grow. So, we can expect to see this in other parts of South Asia. We can expect to see this in some of the more developing countries in Africa, and we can definitively see this in some of the countries in South America as well. And that gets very scary if we don't figure out what to do to bend this curve and to bring these numbers down. Which is very much why India needs to get on board and start leading quickly. So how can India lead? And I think that this is really kind of getting into the bulk of the discussion. Unfortunately, it's also where I hit a roadblock in terms of making slides at the last minute. But it goes right back into the discussion point that I started with and that our last speaker ended with, which is communication. We really, all as professionals working in this space, need to be able to take these points away where we're able to make the business case. And sometimes that's the business case for why the country, sometimes it's the business case for why a specific client needs to be looking at and understanding the risks, the costs of transitioning, costs of not transitioning, the opportunities that are available. And as we look at what's been happening in the Indian market and some of the business models that have been created around ESCOs and whatnot, and as we see some of the benefits that are coming to some of the corporates that are early adopters, we're actually seeing not what has traditionally been considered a penalty for going green, but we're starting to see what's called a green premium, where activities such as early adoption and significant adoption of energy efficiency is able to actually provide significant cost savings. From that perspective, one startup that we have done work with that had a very large cloud footprint, by going through and just looking at how they were coding, they were able to dramatically clean up their code, creating a product that worked better, that was more secure, and cut their server costs by 50%. And by cutting their server costs 50%, they were also cutting the amount of carbon they were putting into the environment quite dramatically. Why? Because the highest cost in running a business in the technology space is your servers, and the server expenses are very much spent on cooling, which is the highest is both very energy intensive and is also accounting for 70% of building energy costs, typically more in actual server farms. But in addition to that, server rooms are quite energy demanding on their own just from running the machines. So there are green premiums that can be found just in terms of thinking about ESG and how to transition smartly. As we think about ESG, one of the big opportunities for India really to start thinking about, we have areas of like the PAT system and some of the early trials around trading, but we also have the ability to start looking at voluntary markets. And one of the things that's very interesting and exciting when we think about voluntary markets, and I think our next speaker, Neha, will be speaking about this a little bit, is that it gives us the opportunity to look beyond what developed markets think of as how we should be practicing ESG and how we should be thinking about carbon credits and looking at models that are really better for India. And the reason I say that, and the reason I think that things like the government's intentions around starting its own model for carbon markets is the models that have been developed, Gold and Vera, are very difficult for smaller producers in India to participate in. The cost and certification costs are very high, but very often they're doing better quality work than a lot of the groups that are getting certified in the US and in Europe. And there's a great John Oliver clip on YouTube that I'd highly recommend people check out if they want a little bit of a laugh and perhaps a little bit of dysphoria about what sometimes happens or how some of the carbon markets get corrupted. But there are great producers and people doing really great work in India, and there's opportunities to support that through the voluntary markets. One of the things that'll be very important as we think about leading is the SME transition. Many of India's workers that are not involved in agriculture are involved in SMEs, and they're a significant driver for the economy. They're a large producer of exports. But when we look to the global markets, when we look to the multinational companies who are sourcing from them, it is very rare that their CSR and ESG plans actually provide funding for them to transition. And earlier this year, I was at Climate Week, and one of the things that I heard repeatedly was multinational companies saying, here we have a checklist, here we have a training program. But very consistently, when I spoke to the speakers after their sessions, they weren't actually providing transition support. They were still putting price pressure on their producers, so compressing margins. And when you consider that in India specifically, and in many developing markets, SMEs do not have large cash flows or significant cash cushions to enable a green transition. So, one of the things we really need to be looking at is how do we help SME transition. And this is a really significant opportunity for larger Indian businesses. And we've seen a number of our Indian business houses, whether that be the Tatas, the Mahindras, the Godrejas, et cetera, the Aditya Birla Group, all starting to support the transition of their suppliers. And one of the things that's exciting when we start seeing this is that it's not just benefiting the suppliers, but it's also creating models that the suppliers can then take to the brands that they're serving or supporting, and that can set best practices globally. But I think, again, and especially for those of us on the call who might be working in this space, it's really important to get back to those pieces around communications and the business case. But there really is a business case for most of the transitions that can happen within the SME sector around cost savings and improved efficiencies, better quality outputs, and so forth. Another area that India needs to lead and that is really critical to our achieving our ESG goals is financial innovation and green finance. And this is an area we spend a lot of time on at Green Artha, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this. So I'm not going to dig into it as much on this call because it's not the key area for this call. Although I will say with $43 trillion in assets under management that have been pledged towards green transition, whether that be asset managers like BlackRock or funds that are supporting this, there is fundamentally capital that can be leveraged to enable the transitions and to do some of the work that you're wanting to do. And there's also levers that can be used from that perspective against those who are not wanting to participate. From a government and policy perspective, as moving beyond just having these business cases around why to transition and what are the benefits of ESG, because I really do think that there is a fundamental business case for this, whether that be related to employees and their happiness, or investors and their comfort in investing, or just the very fundamental cost savings and the risk avoidance and whatnot of participating in ESG initiatives. I think that there can be other both incentives and regulations against laggards. I think the government is trying to make some progress in that. The biggest issue across the board is enforcement. And we actually are in several states starting to see more enforcement. So I think from that, we are able to see that there's opportunities to take that across the board into other markets as well. Okay. The final thing that we have going on here in India is the government has come out with this Lifestyles for Environment campaign. And I think that this is where it really comes down to like what you're doing in your home. And it gets into talking about reduced consumption and responsible choice making. And one of the things that we can consider, each of us individually is as we're making choices about how we're consuming, we are able to influence the businesses and how they're making decisions. So, if we're looking at brands and expecting them to be responsible with their suppliers, not just from the perspective of selling us a green t-shirt, but also making sure that the supplier of that green t-shirt has a viable business, we can all be better off. The final couple points I'll say is we think about this business case for why ESG, why climate. For every $1 invested in climate change, so far we're seeing a $4 return. And when we think about India, by hitting or not hitting the target that India set to be carbon neutral by 2070, we have an $11 trillion opportunity or a $35 trillion risk. Right. So we all have a lot of business cases that we can make, whether we're talking at a macro level or a micro level. The final point I'll say is there's a group called Forum for the Future, which has done some great work with a handful of corporates, really getting into the details around what their business risks are. And they published some of these reports. We've covered them a couple of times in Business India. And I think they provide a really interesting use case for how do you avoid the costs of climate change within your business and thinking about where you're locating factories and why you should be making sure that you're doing things responsibly, whether that be treating your wastewater and getting to net zero water, or why you should be making sure that you're doing well from an energy efficiency perspective, reduced emissions and whatnot. And so with that, I know I didn't focus entirely on ESG and net zero, but I hope I did give everybody some food for thought and some tools in terms of how to think about the business case and how to communicate the business case when they're talking to different constituencies. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our hosts or open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Taline. This is really good. We found out a few more words that are relatively new for people who have been following on ESG. One of the questions that somebody in the chat, one of our audiences in the chat actually brought up was, in your experience, is there a country which has been a high volunteering market, which you feel yourself is a promising way to take it forward even for India? Would there be an example in your experience of any market which is good enough where we can kind of take some steps to be inspired by, especially India perspective?
I think if you look at some of the startup community, and I don't think there's a country per se, but I think if you look at some of the startup community in the US, where you see companies like Stripe saying that they're going to put a voluntary price on carbon that in some cases is going up to $1,000 per unit, because they see that when you pair time value of carbon with the value that can be created and the reductions in carbon that can happen if that technology were to reach economies of scale, I think that's a really interesting model. And I think that when they did it, we started seeing that other people were doing it. And it started creating some fundamental shifts in how the dialogue was happening around pricing different types of carbon credits and looking at the quality of credits. So I don't think that there's a particular country, but I do think that there's pockets. Another one that I could point out is here in India, as part of Act for Environment and in partnership with BCG, we launched the Green Startup Pledge, where we're actively working with startups with the idea that if they start adopting ESG principles early on and looking at how can they build sustainably, they will reduce the need to have transition costs over time. They will also be able to, in some cases, reduce their growth costs as they're building. And so additionally, when you're looking at some of the pressures being put on startups right now around cutting their burn, when you have tools around energy efficiency or how to cut your server costs by 50%, which in many cases can be a very significant expense for tech-driven startups, we're able to see that green premium. And I think that models like these are really imperative for finding those types of business use cases. Similarly, like I mentioned before, Forum for the Future did a fantastic project with Aditya Birla Group, where they literally laid out the risks related to every single factory that they are operating and gave them tools to think about where they're looking at putting new factories, how they're working with their suppliers and so forth. So I think right now, not one market where I'd say, wow, they're doing great. We do see some states in the US that are doing well. We see that there's countries in Europe where they're moving more towards mandatory markets, but yes, I'll open up for the next question.
This is great, really.
All right.
It's nice to understand that there probably are pockets that we can look at, especially startup driven, and not really look at a country.
Do you have any questions?
Do you have a question? Yes, I do have.
Okay, so Isa is asking something. Yeah, Isa, please go ahead.
Thank you, madam, I've been enjoying your talk. This is basically a topic or a business scaled in India, right? So I want to know that if this is also going to be scaled up to any other African countries.
So right now, Green Artha operates only in India, and we think India has enough problems for us to keep us more than busy. We do have partner organizations that are working in Africa. We have been associated with the World Bank Climate Innovation Centers, which have several organizations working in Africa. We also support the International Solar Alliance, which currently has a SolarX program that's going on, and they are doing work across Africa. And we are always open to building collaborations and supporting others in the work that they're doing when we can.
All right, thank you. I have another question. This business setting, right? So I want to know, because recently COVID came and everything went bad. So I want to be sure, as business partners or business-minded individuals, they have been taking or putting measures that even if there is occurrences like that, they should be able to cover up as a team that will not collapse. I don't know if you get my point.
I'm sorry, Isaiah. I don't know if I was having like a fluctuation in my Wi-Fi, but I didn't understand exactly what was the question.
Can you put it in the chat? Can you put it in the chat?
Sorry?
Can you put it in the chat, please?
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him to put it in the chat, the question.
Hi, so can I step in now?
Yes.
I'm Umang, and just to give my background, because I'm a lawyer in 20 years, I've worked in investments, transactions, corporate advisory, and everything. So, which is where the question will come from experience. I mean, there's a lot to discuss with you, so I'll separately connect with you. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that sustainability and ESG is very contextual to a jurisdiction, as you rightly said, and India is in that momentum, and we are doing all of that with innovation, technology, startups, social enterprises. The capital is turning green, but just coming to specifically the size, whether you go look at the businesses or even the funds for that matter. So the funds I have worked with, and I still see, they first focus on their ROI, the return on investment, which is very tangible and financial. I mean, there is a movement of impact investment that is bringing up, so that is a hopeful thing. So my question is around how funds should be made to focus on their stewardship and fiduciary duty. And the similar thing on the startups, I have experienced that I work with a lot of startups. Everybody has a new idea. They come to us for fundraising. But when you talk about this whole sustainability right from the inception, forget about sustainability. They want to cut down the legal costs. Everybody wants this for free. So which is where I feel conceptually it's the right thing. It logically makes complete sense. But on both sides, I feel there is a resistance, and it is still financial priorities in place. So in your experience, what do you think can be done and has been successfully been able to address this?
Well, so I think there's a couple things, right? I think one of them is going back to that idea of like, how do you create the business case for it? And when we think about, sorry. So when we look at the business case around startups, and when we think about how to work with them, we really start out with the point from the perspective of where can you save costs, right? And there are a lot of areas, particularly in India, when you're looking at startups, where you can find some pretty significant cost savings, relatively easily, and still look at going green and doing so. When we started the Green Startup Pledge for ACT is backed by many of India's leading venture capitalists, and they were part of conceptualizing this. I don't think that they will ever in any way impose it on all of their startups, but it is something that they are pushing, and it's something that they're also seeing that their LPs are pushing them to do, right? So in what was it, COP26, they started GFANs, which is where they got all of the very large asset managers together, and they got this $43 trillion pledge for assets to be diverted to net zero by 2050. And in that net zero by 2050, that you also have to have like 50% of your carbon emissions cut by 2030 to show that you're making the progress. And so we saw with a lot of LPs making these types of commitments, there is now starting to be pressure on the funds, the venture capital funds or private equity funds. And GFANs is actively trying to get the venture capital and private equity funds to sign up. Generally speaking, actually not generally, quite significantly, they're not. But I do think that the ones that we're working with here in India actually are looking at this as an opportunity to move themselves towards being compliant and move their startups towards being compliant so that they are able to participate in those funds or are not excluded from them, because that's a really significant chunk of capital. I think when we think about it from the perspective of other businesses, not just startups, again, there are significant instances within India, and I think that perhaps it's just because the costs of electricity are sometimes very high, the costs of water for corporates are very high. When we're able to like get in and make a case around what are the economics of doing this differently, we're able to very clearly show that there can be cost savings. And so in a cost sensitive market, that's actually a really significant benefit. We also think that that's part of the reason that India can really excel as we start looking at what these new markets can be and how the green transition is going to take place. More than, what is it, 5-6 trillion people or billion people are living in markets that are not the developed markets, which means that they're looking for lower cost options. And and as we look at how the economies are, the larger economy is developing, I don't think that the US and Europe are going to be like really keen on paying dramatic premiums for a long time if there's something that is as good and lower cost. And we see that even from the brands coming out of the US and Europe and Japan and whatnot. So, there's great opportunity that comes for the businesses that are coming up in markets like India and like Africa, if they're able to really create products that are saving money, that are delivering business models that make sense, and that are providing cost savings, as well as the opportunity to improve climate emissions and behavior. Hi, Dr. V, I see you.
Thank you, Charlie, for the interest of time. I think we can, I'm so sorry. Our next speaker is waiting.
Yeah, I see Neha there. She's looking beautiful as ever. So, and I think everybody's in for a real treat with the next one.
So we'll take it towards the end of the session, Isa. So I think it's time for presenting the virtual mementos. Darling, I would request you to switch on your camera and, yes, here we are.
Thank you, everybody. And, anybody's welcome to connect with me. It's always nice to connect with new people. And I wish you all the best with the rest of the sessions as well.
Thank you, Starling. And I would request you to, if you can, answer Sa's question. He was asking something. If you can answer him through the chat, it would be great. And,
sure.
Yeah. Nimisha, can we go
to the next one? Thank you so much, Starleen. And the ones who have tuned in just now, I would like to tell you that this brilliant session today is the 5th edition of the Social Town Talk Series, International Conference on ESG and Net Zero. And just as what Starleen says, yes, you are in for a treat with our next speaker. She is Neha Mishra. A lot of people know of her because she is an advisor to the Board of Governors at IIM Visakhapatnam and believes in the immense strength of stakeholders. A few lines about Neha would be, Neha Mishra is the CEO and co-founder of the FinLit project, a finance and fintech educational platform for individuals with almost no financial background. Incubated at IIIT Delhi and STPI Chennai, she has more than a decade of experience in technology and finance and has worked for corporates and startups in India and the USA, including working at Wall Street, New York. She believes in green and sustainable finance and is currently working on building a results-based climate finance platform with Green Earth. She's perhaps the best person to ask questions to whenever you want to bring in a touch of finance with ESG. Presenting Neha Mishra to you. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to the session.
Thank you so much, Nimisha, for that really kind and warm introduction. I couldn't have asked for anyone else to facilitate the session but you. So really glad to see some familiar faces in the audience as well. Thank you, Neenu, for having me deliver this address on why results-based finance is important. And also very excited to present results-based finance, particularly with reference to what we are building at Renata. A lot of people know this, but for those who are listening to me for the first time, I don't traditionally come from a finance background. So ESG, finance, sustainable finance was as new to me as it might be for some of you in the audience. These are all very fascinating words, which are very, very fundamental in nature, And I feel that, and it's so nice to, and also a tough job to follow Starleen. So in a bit of a pickle of a situation there. But like Starleen highlighted how India stands at that crux of being able to provide the market that can, sort of propel ESG and the future that we have. If we look at the fundamental values we have within the country, sustainable finance is something that we've all practiced or related to at some point in time throughout our life. But because we are at that point in time where, and I live in Delhi, and a lot of us who are here would relate to the fact that it's harder to breathe during the winter months here, no matter how much we try to tell ourselves with our air purifiers and other things. It's harder to imagine a planet which will continue to sustain if we continue to exploit it the way we've been doing over the last 50 years, which is why monumentally events like these, which, I'm really glad the Social Town has been hosting, are fundamentally important in telling and reminding people of the fundamental values that sustainable finance has. So what I'm going to do in the next 5 to 7 minutes when I talk about results-based finance is primarily something that you already know. And nothing new that is not known to us, but it's just when we sort of form ideologies or words. And I heard the speaker before, Starleen, talk about why there needs to be greater accountability within social and governance. What is ESG as a framework? A lot of it is new. And a lot of it is new because we thought that we could continue to exploit the planet the way we were doing. But we can't anymore, which is why it is important that we talk about the significance of how we can maybe alter our actions just a little bit, not much, and see the significant impact it will have on the planet. So when Neenu reached out to me and said, Neha, what would you like to talk about? I think just immediately, it didn't even take me a couple of seconds. And I said that I'd love to talk about results-based finance, primarily from a fascinating product that we are building at Green Artha, which is called the Outcomes Exchange. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through what RBF or results-based finance is, how outcomes are significant to building a platform that can enable a lot of exponential impact on the planet, and why it really matters. So I love taking questions on the go. So please drop in your questions while I'm delivering, and I'll take as many as I can in the interest of time while I'm delivering the presentation. But a very, very short presentation on what results-based finance is. Are some of you familiar with what RBF is? Or have you heard of it in some of the work that you've done? There are many different ways to look at results-based finance, but it's nothing but results and finance. And finance is nothing but investments or putting money in places which can give you a return on investment. And I know that Umang was talking about ROI, which I'd love to cover in my talk as well. But we'll talk a little bit about why sustainable finance matters. Anyone? Why does sustainable finance matter at all? What is the significance of sustainable finance? And is there a need to build sustainable finance as a separate vertical when we were doing finance and investing all this while? And all of us know the answer to this, but I'll just quickly highlight for some who may be new. When we talk about creating greater accountability for processes around environment, for processes which may go out of our dustbins, but do not go out of our lives, it's imperative that we talk more about long-term. We talk about altering our actions around sustainability. We talk about imbibing some of these activities in the work that we do to invest in projects that will have baseline, not an adverse impact on the planet. And the better part would be to go give back to the planet more than we can take from it. So very simply, if you had to align whatever vision you had around finance to any of the SDGs, to any of your ways to create this accountability around social good, that's where sustainable finance would come in. And when we talk about results-based financing, we've been doing sustainable finance investments for some time now, but something that came up, and this is the incredible team at Green Artha when they were in this design thinking workshop, when they realized that, okay, if we're putting money into initiatives which should be creating greater good for the planet, what is the gap that is happening? Why are we still not able to see the results? Why is it suddenly gotten, and I was reading this yesterday, that Bangalore is expected to hit a heat wave in the coming days. Why are we not able to at least, create a restriction on the adverse effects that we're having, but also have an accountability for where money is going, which is where RBF, or results-based finance, comes into the picture. So far, when you put money into a project, you invest and you wait for something magical to all of a sudden happen. When the timeline has passed and you look at the results, you're like, why is it not creating the impact that I anticipated it to create as a corporate? Which is when you say that, I need to re-strategize, right? I need to start looking at things in a different way. So first of all, let me divide whatever work I need to take into different pillars or parts of my overall project. So instead of funding a project, if I could incentivize for some pre-agreed and verified results. Now, something which is very, very important and which is very fundamental to results-based finance is the verification and measurement part. Stalin and I were at the World Sustainable Development Summit a couple of days ago, and there was a lot of talk around digital MRV, or measurement, results, and validation, and why we need to integrate technology. Because a lot of time, financing for a particular project has a large chunk which actually goes towards verification, which actually goes towards monitoring, which actually goes among, pardon me for bringing this up again, towards legal and compliance. Whereas only 30 to 40% goes towards the goal that it was supposed to be addressing. And results-based financing as a mechanism is designed to alter that process. It's not about saying that, so far if we were doing something, was it wrong? No, it definitely wasn't wrong. But probably there might be a better way to execute projects within sustainable finance. And results-based financing provides me that avenue to shift my mindset to start talking about what is the outcome and start shifting the focus from reports or long pages of where the money went, what workshops were conducted for facilitating, for example, a project around water initiative, but bringing in more impact through practice and evidence. And when we talk about results-based financing, the focus fundamentally shifts from project execution to the need for outcomes. And when we say outcomes, something which is very close to all of us at Green Artha is shifting the focus to climate outcomes. And the biggest challenge that we have at hand right now is, if there is no planet, who will we educate? Who will we do social good for? So it is very important that we start talking about why the climate or the planet needs to be saved first. How can you bring in greater transparency, greater accountability for the actions that we do? And all of us have been guilty of throwing that plastic water bottle out of the car, thinking that we've gone ahead on the road and nobody is gonna see what we actually did. But when you shift the larger focus to accountability, when you shift the focus to provide accessibility for initiatives in the rural sector, SMEs who are not aware of different kinds of funding instruments that they can avail, you talk about creating this larger ecosystem where anyone who needs financing has a platform which can provide them financing, which is not talking about your past data. We're talking about what can you provide in terms of an execution from a sustainable and a climate perspective. And when you do that, and all of us, and I'm sure some of you are from the CSR space, when you do that and you have a project that is going to start showing better results, there's an exponential impact on the flow that funding can, come in. So we talk a lot about the gap in climate funding. It's not like climate funding hasn't come. There's only a small portion, unfortunately, that has come to India. But as we create room for larger funding to come into India, it's also imperative that we have an infrastructure that can support that. And when we talk about creating that infrastructure, we need to start talking about measuring these results. At Renatha, we built something, Manya and Maya from our team have built something which we call as the taxonomy around it. And when we talk about that, it's important that you start looking at outcomes across sectors. How can you align your goals to the results that you're looking for, rather than just talking about, oh, it might be nice to have a green cover in this space. What kind of green cover? What are the different ways of achieving that green cover? Are there any co-benefits around it? Is this afforestation drive leading to a betterment in soil yield and soil quality? Is it also causing a reduction in the amount of water that may be used for that particular project? And when you start analyzing these metrics from a technology and a data standpoint, that is when you start shifting the focus from avoiding greenwashing, from avoiding double counting, from avoiding and stepping into this movement which talks about sustainable growth. It talks about creating that environment where the funding that is flowing larger towards the initiative or the outcome that was desired, and less towards the other ad hoc procedures around it. So if I had to sort of break down results-based financing in a very, very simple way, and because I said at the beginning of the session, I come from a non-finance background, primarily, I always like to break down things in a very, very simple way. It's nothing but a contractual agreement between a funder. It could be via an implementation agency, it could be via a platform, it could be via many different ways to provide these services and get verification for the results that you had aimed out to be. Those results could be across energy, it could be across land, air, circularity, any domain. But now we're not talking about executing things from a project standpoint, but talking about executing these things and feeling happy about the results that come in. So when we actually start to see, oh, wow, this actually created a holistic society. This actually led to, so much more water for the community. This actually led to energy savings or better energy efficiency. And when the results are in front of you, trust me, you and I would believe that there's greater flow of funding that we can bring into the system. Starting touched base a little bit about building voluntary carbon markets. And while building voluntary carbon markets is very critical to how we will shape the future of sustainable finance in the country, what we are trying to talk about is an additional approach of building additional voluntary markets that can create infrastructure to bring in results-based financing, not just in the carbon space, but across water credits, but across soil credits, but across air credits, because it's not just carbon credits that impact us at the end of the day. So the need to talk is just shifting that mindset. And again, from a legal standpoint, not just about return on investments, not just about looking at that additional 11% or 12% return that you can get on your investments, but talking about social return on investment, talking about that little less investment that you may be taking in the short term, but the larger benefit that you're creating for society, and the larger benefit that you're creating for community, and the larger benefit that you're creating for the planet, because without the planet, again, all this would not be able to happen. So just to sum it up, it's very vital that we start thinking about the shift in mindset. It's very vital that we start exploring newer ways of bringing results and accountability to the fore. And it's very, very important. And I'd like all of you to affirm and tell yourself that if we only alter the way we think about results, not just from a return on investment and a financial benefit, that's when there will be a fundamental and a transcendental shift in the climate outcomes that we can achieve for the planet. With that, thank you so much. My name is Neha Mishra. I'm leading the building of the Outcomes Exchange at Green Artha. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of the Finlit Project. I'm an IITM alumni. I work with SEBI. I'm a Fauji wife. I'm a mother to an 8-year-old. And when I look at that 8-year-old child, it's very, very important that we start thinking about results, we start thinking about climate benefit, and we start thinking about impact. Thank you so much, Neenu, the Social Town, Green Artha, Starleen, and everyone here for giving me this opportunity to talk about some of my work. And I really look forward to taking some of your questions and hope that I can add some value.
All right.
Yeah. Nimisha, can you take the questions, please?
Such a brilliant session, right? Neha actually puts a dollop of joy at the end of the session.
Yes.
Even if everybody's tired, it's been a long day, it's a weekend, Saturday's just about ending in India. Neha comes with this brightness, a streak of joy, and everybody's just joining in once again to see, oh, wow, she has so much to say. Let's go back and find out more about it and learn more insights. A lot of questions came in, Neha. Wanted to ask you just one or two here.
Sure.
Says accountability is very important, and thank you for your brilliant lecture. So you have a lot of accolades which are coming in. Bhavya says, thank you, ma'am, for your great insights. Especially sustainable finance is something not many people touch upon. There are not too many experts on it either, perhaps. So that was quite insightful for us. Very good presentation. It was lucid, effortless. We understood what you wanted to convey. That itself was such a strong point here. Prachi is also asking you if there is a strategy that can be easy to understand for financing the transition to a sustainable methodology ahead. Is there some kind of a tool that you can suggest, or is there a way out?
Oh, that's a great question, Prachi. Thank you so much for asking that question. This is a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of a situation sometimes. We talk about the shift for sustainability. We talk about the need to start looking at our accounting standards from a different point of view, whereas we don't have any frameworks within India which support that. But while there are no frameworks currently, there's a lot of opportunity to start thinking about building some of those frameworks. I've been fortunate to work with an entity which supports transitioning towards green, which supports transitioning towards sustainable growth. It's not an easy journey. It's definitely not something that will give you immediate returns. And unfortunately, like all good things which take time to come, that transition to green does take time to come. I remember this time when I was at the HDFC AGM and I suggested to the MD and I said, why don't you think about bringing in sustainable fixed deposits in India? And there were so many people that I recommended, and I said, why don't you invest in this sustainable fixed deposit, which is only going to invest in companies which practice sustainability and are doing something in that regard. The immediate response I got was, it's only 6%. It's only so much. And while people look at the short-term returns, which may be lesser in financial, there is a shift in terms of thinking about the goods which you don't see otherwise, which may not be necessarily visible to you. And why we talk about RBF, and perhaps, Prachi, this could be a way to lead, and that's how we are trying to do, is results can be seen. And people only believe things that you can see and touch and feel. Sometimes if you cannot see the things that are around you, you feel that, nothing good is coming out. So if you start thinking long-term, there's a shift in mindset that organizations, corporates need to do beyond the CSR exercise. beyond doing something because it has to be done and it's March and otherwise that money will go down and not be utilized for any purpose. But to think of what is the result and the impact of the work that I've done. And when you start thinking about that very consciously, you start changing or altering the mindset as an individual. And when you do that at an individual level, it has a ripple effect at a family level. And when it has that ripple effect at a family level, it has a ripple effect at the community level, which may not be very visible in the beginning, but that's how I think you should lead the way. But that's a great question, Prachi. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Neha.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Happy to connect with all of you. Please, I'm at Neha I'm going to write it down. Please feel free to reach out to know more about some of the incredible work that we do. Do follow us, and across the Finlit project and Green Artha, our goal is to make finance, sustainable finance, green finance. You can call it all kinds of words. At the end of the day, it's about deploying money in places which will have some future for the generation that is to come. That's all. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's time to present the virtual Mondo. And I love this part.
Thank you so much, Neenu. I had a great time and really looking forward to the panel and session tomorrow. But very, very well executed program on a weekend. And I can see so many people are still joining in, coming back in. We speak so much for the great work that you and Nimisha are doing. Very nice to see Nimisha again, very, very happy that you're associated with the cause and always happy to come back for additional. And otherwise, if there's any question that may have been left unanswered, please feel free to reach out. Take care and have a very good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Neha. So that's for today. So I'll be here for some more time if anyone would like to. I'm Dr. Sudhir or Umang. Anyone would like to come and talk or share anything, that will be great. Otherwise, we can wind up for today, and we will see tomorrow because it's a long day. We all joined here by 5 p.m. today. So I was surprised because I mentioned that it's 5:30 p.m. But when I started, the meeting, I can see 20 people waiting. So I was so really happy. Thank you for that. That one, Saturday. Our fourth edition was actually 1 year before, so we took a break for the in between. And I thought it will be tough for me to get some good people to be part of this, but surprisingly, thank you. Even after normal world is still we are not in a pandemic time, so you had a lot of other activities, but you are here listening to us. That means a lot to me, and we had a fantastic time here listening to all our speakers, touching their real life stories, and I am sure that you all enjoyed listening to them, gain a lot of insights. And I'm not going deep into the subjects here, but if you want to discuss anything, some of the speakers are still here. So if you want to ask something, or if you would like to share about your work, or just want to say hello, we can do that. I'll be stopping the recording now, but we can take the conversation for some more time. But otherwise, if you are tired or if you want to take it now, and we will see you tomorrow. Right, Nimisha? So you want to just say bye for today, and then.
Such a beautiful audience. It's so amazing to be actually getting an opportunity by the Social Town, by Ms. Neenu Ratan, the founder of Social Town, who gave me a chance to speak to everybody. This is an honor and a privilege to be really conversing and discussing the future of not just India, but the world. ESG is the path that we all must take in our own ways, in our own facets. We should try and make an effort to actually save the planet. So if we have planet first, we will see profitability, we will see sustainability, and we will see a certain future where we all will find a reason to not just survive, but to live well. I thank you, and I would leave you with that thought. and I will come back again. And I really sincerely thank Neenu for this opportunity. Thank you, the Social Town.
Thank you, Nimisha. Any last words, Umang? Any last words for the lady?
I thought leave it for the other audience to share their inputs or everything. I'll just quickly, there's so much to discuss on this theme. And personally, when I started my journey, people didn't even know what ESG was. And they used to tell me, stop doing this environment, Jhola Chhap, social workerish conversations. But I'm so glad how this whole ecosystem where, labor, environment, social, community were in separate silos. When you talked about these themes, they were into voluntary sector, sort of, your heart bleeds for causes and charity. It should be charitable. It has all come down here. And today we are talking about sustainable finance, which is my favorite subject, how capital of the world is turning green. So we are going to discuss this tomorrow. And I think I'll just thank you for organizing this and bringing such amazing speakers from different spectrum and aspects, talking about things in this space. So I'm looking forward to hearing more, engaging more. Great thing that is happening. And we'll talk more in future on these subjects and themes and maybe bring synergies together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Savita, do you want to tell something?
It is my immense pleasure to have this workshop. Being a research scholar doing under non-financial disclosure, coming with ESG topic, it throwed me with a lot of points and it helped me out to proceed my research work. Hope to enjoy and listen for further sessions from tomorrow. Thank you all for organizing this.
So let me, you all, anybody here can just show their face. We can click a picture. Be great, no? Please switch on your cameras and we can click a picture. Be great. Hi, Bhavya, Basil, Anurag, Dr. Vanida, Vandana, thank you. Okay, at least I know I'm giving you a heads up, right? Please switch on your camera tomorrow. At least we can have a nice picture together. Anyone would like to join us, please do. So we are going to click the picture now. Okay. But we had a great number of participants today. So please join tomorrow. And we are here. If you would like to interact with others, please do so. I'll be here till 9 o'clock. We can have a chat, or others can take leave now. We are officially done with our talks.